Happy hump day, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. Happy to have you with us, as is always the case. The show today and every single day is brought to you by our friends at Big Willie's, Utah Sports Bar at 1717 South Main Street. Check them out. Tell them OC sent you. Craft cocktails, beautiful, delicious, expansive food menu. They do it all very well. Beers on draft, cold beers in the coolers. It's a hot day again. If you're looking for something to do for your lunch, they run a lunch special every single day between $13 and $15. And I will tell you this, you will not leave dissatisfied, because what Big Willie's does is they take like a burger, a chicken sandwich, a wrap, and they accompany it with a side that could also be an entree. They'll be like, oh, here's some egg rolls on the side. Here's some wings on the side. It's not just veggies or fries. You can get veggies and fries, obviously. But they really fill you up, and it's great food. Tell them OC sent you at Big Willie, 1717 South Main Street. We have our Utah season kickoff party happening at the Broadway studios today. I am confined to the studio itself, so a little bit of FOMO happening, but because everybody's in the building, or several people are in the building, I should say, not everybody is in the building, but we're going to do our best to get some folks to come on air with us. And I just was catching up with Trevor Riley. I don't know if he got taller or I'm getting shorter. It's not like the first time I've been around Trevor Riley, obviously, but I think he grew. I think he's taller, or maybe he's got lifts in his shoes. Or maybe, like I said, maybe I shrunk. I think Rojo's going to be here. We'll figure it out. Beth Lanier is going to join us on the show. We know that. Adrian Denny is going to be in the building. James Peterson is behind the glass.
It kind of looks like you shrunk, OC, in that chair there.
Yeah, Scott Mitchell was in the chair earlier today. And Scott, like, for those of you who haven't been around Scott Mitchell in person, you probably haven't been around someone very often who's bigger than Scott Mitchell.
It is hilarious on the YouTube because it's like just your head and a little bit of shoulder. I'm gonna go in there and fix the camera real quick.
You don't have to fix the camera. I'll fix the chair because I don't like sitting down this low. I actually really dislike it. But yeah, Scott Mitchell was in the chair, and for him, you know, he's so tall, he's got to lower the chair all the way down in order to come into the mic and the camera in the right spot. And I've got to be like the little kid.
Well, and these chairs, unfortunately, are starting to, even though they're supposed to lock, they're starting to like slowly fall.
So maybe maybe Scott started up here. And just over the course of the show, just kind of, if you're watching on YouTube, just gradually elevator down. All right, that could have happened.
It could have been either one. There we go.
All right. In any case, we're excited to have Utah athletics, Utah dignitaries, Utah legends in the building today.
Did you want me to give you some confirmed people in the building here? So you mentioned Trevor.
Hold on though, because
we may not.
I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. So we'll tell you who's here, but that's not a promise that we're going to get them on the air, because they're shaking hands, they're kissing babies. More importantly, they're enjoying themselves.
Yeah,
and not a lot of people like talking to me. So there might be some that are just like, yeah, no, that's okay. Thank you. No thanks.
One guy we already got confirmed, and we're planning for now 12:30. It might be more like 1. It's going to be fluid situation here. Trevor Riley, he loves talking on the radio. Loves talk. Like I've only talked to him like 3 times. He spent like 45 minutes just talking to me. So he seems to just love to talk, which, as you guys, as listeners know that about, you already know that about Trevor. Great radio guest, great guy. So he's going to be on the show 12:30, 1 o'clock, somewhere in there. And then Rojo, you mentioned, will be here. We'll effort getting him to sit down with you in studio. We'll see on that. And then we're waiting on confirmation from one other Ute legend. Coach Mack is going to be in the building. I don't know if he's going to have time for us on the show, but he will be in the building. We're going to do our best to get Coach Mack. And then one other Ute legend that we'll tell you if and when he gets here. I think you already mentioned Beth Lanier, Utah volleyball head coach, is going to be in studio. at 11:30. Adrian Denny for Between the Pipes. He's also a Ute alum, so he was excited about coming to this little shindig we're throwing for our sales clients for Utah related. So yeah, everybody's gonna be in studio. We'll see who we end up getting.
Either way, we're going to have some fun on the show today. By the way, your Utah women's volleyball team comes in the preseason rankings, 23rd? So top 25 in college football you're a lot more familiar with. They do one for volleyball as well. Nebraska, Penn State, Pittsburgh, Louisville, Texas are the top 5. BYU came in at 19. Utah came in at 23. And the Big 12 Conference is a really good volleyball conference for people who don't know. You've got in the top 25, the preseason top 25 for volleyball. You've got Arizona State represented. You've got Baylor, BYU, Utah, and TCU. So good chunk of teams getting the nod in volleyball. We'll talk with Beth Lanier here in about half an hour. We've been having fun setting over-under numbers on offensive and defensive totals. I'm going to deviate a little bit from that today, although we will have some over-under numbers I do have some over-under numbers for you. Looking at the interceptions total that Utah was able to create last year and the turnover margin that Utah was able to create last year. Now, turnover margin is not exclusively a defensive stat, of course, because even if your defense creates a ton of turnovers and then your offense gives up a ton of turnovers, your turnover margin doesn't look great. But the sort of base level of a turnover margin is, can you create them? How many do you create? And then you hope that your ball control offense, because we're talking about Utah here, protects the football and possesses the football and keeps the football and doesn't hand it back to the other team.
It's a good point by you about it being a two-way stat, because the unfortunate thing is the offense is going to turn the ball over. That's a certainty. It's not a certainty that your defense is going to get a turnover.
Correct. Eventually, somebody's going to drop a center quarterback exchange. Bad snaps happen.
Bad read, you throw it right to the defender.
And look,
whatever.
There's a situation where you're looking at a quarterback. I am as optimistic or more optimistic than anyone else about what Devin Dampier is capable of, but the thing that you can't look at his numbers so far in his career and say is that he's exceptional in protecting the ball in passing situations. I think there's a lot more to it than just saying, oh, he makes bad reads. I think you really have to pay attention to the film to see that some of those balls are decisions made while under duress, decisions made that other quarterbacks would just have taken sacks, and that's probably something that he'll do this year, instead of trying to force the ball into double coverage and things like that. But it wasn't a stellar year for Utah from an interception standpoint a season ago. It wasn't a stellar year for Utah in the turnover margin a season ago. For those that don't know, the Utes finished the season -4 in the turnover margin. Not where you want to be. So the over-under I'm going to set for the turnover margin for Utah is just 1.5, plus 1.5. Are you in the positive? And if you are in the positive, are you up there with a top 4, top 5 kind of situation? Because last year, Arizona State won the conference at a plus 14 turnover margin.
Holy crap.
Colorado was next with a plus 12. And you know why Colorado was so good in their turnover margin? Because Shedeur didn't turn the ball over.
Yeah. Hey, that's why you got number 2 up in the rafters there.
Don't. Oh, you ruined it.
Cleveland Browns legend Shedeur Sanders.
I was about to say something nice about Shedeur Sanders instead of being a hater, because I am a hater. I've admitted that to people. And then you ruined it because you reminded me that they retired his jersey number.
The Browns, I think, just retired his number, too, after one preseason game.
He had like 158 yards in a preseason game. Why wouldn't you?
Did you see he, like, with the highlights, he looked good. I didn't watch the game, but in the stuff I saw, he looked pretty good. Did, like, credit to him in his first pro start. But, like, the finger guns and the stuff, it's like, dude, preseason. Like, but that's Shedeur. So there you go. What are you going to do?
I mean, there's nothing wrong with somebody celebrating their first successes in an NFL
I guess
uniform.
First touchdown, it's like do something big.
Also,
it doesn't matter if it's preseason.
When we're talking about preseason, like, did you see Corene Reed's interception?
I missed that.
Corene Reed got an interception in a preseason game, right? And
who do you wind up with?
Broncos.
Okay.
I think he's 57.
Where all the Utes end up,
yeah,
it seems like.
I think he's,
whether they're drafted there or undrafted, they somehow end up in Denver.
I think he's wearing number 57. And
right.
So Corene Reed snags an interception in a preseason game. And the celebration in the preseason game was like he's a guy who's used to success and used to being a playmaker in college football, right? So he would be excited about about plays he would make in games for the University of Utah, and it'd be like, cool. In this preseason game, he celebrated that interception more aggressively than any play he made in a Utah uniform. And that's totally acceptable, normal, and fine for me, because what you're doing is you're trying to make a roster, and making a play and standing out on film is the only way that somebody like him has a chance of making a roster. And add the element of, like, that is a scripted moment from probably when you were 9 years old.
Yeah, your first okay. You've rebuked me, probably rebuked me for being a little like eye rolly about Shedeur Sanders, but I think it's mainly because of the point you made. Corene wasn't that guy until that moment, and Shedeur, it's like, yes, dude, we know you think you're awesome, and so it makes you roll your eyes when Shedeur does it, but it's totally fair in that moment. First pro touchdown pass. The dude's been dreaming about it since since forever, I should say. That's like, yeah, go ahead and showboat a little bit.
It's something that my older brother and I, when we used to watch NFL games together, he started pointing out and I didn't notice it. You know, he was a more observant person than me. And probably when he was like 14, I was like 11. He started making fun of guys that would make special teams tackles
and celebrate
and act like it was the biggest thing that ever happened. And I was like, yeah, that is kind of weird. But now I understand it, because when you are
a special teams player,
as a guy,
Sean O'Connell.
I mean, yeah, like as a guy who ended the bulk of my college career and all of my college football stats were effectively special teams tackles. Yeah. You know what I mean? So when you look at that and you see these guys at the NFL level and certainly at the college football level, for some of us, that is your Super Bowl moment. That is, like, I remember trotting out onto an actual game field for the first time in a college football uniform and being like, it's finally happening. I finally am actually a college football player. Like, I loved my time with that Fiesta Bowl team. I loved it. But I didn't feel like a college football player because I was in practice. Like, I might as well have been redshirting. There was, like, 19 people on that team would have had to die before they put me in a game.
Yeah.
And I knew that from literally the first day of practice, because I told this story
painfully told that, basically.
Urban Meyer said, hey, all you walk-ons, welcome. Stay the bleep out of the way. What?
Was that the original in the way? Or what's the line now? All enter in the way. Special teams, just don't be in the way.
Maybe they decided at some point on that team, like, one of those guys was not all in. He was in the way instead. Let's make this a slogan for us.
So
Corene, celebrate your head off. Even Shedeur Sanders, like, I will say this. There was a perverse level of satisfaction when he slipped out of the second round. Like, man, you're not as cool as you think you are. And then I rebuked myself. I chastised myself for feeling that way about a guy who, when you really boil it down, is just kind of a spoiled kid whose parents have done well for him, but also in that regard maybe failed him a little bit in allowing him to every day of his life think that he's universally loved, respected, admired.
Yeah.
And
that's not his fault.
And it became, for me, a sympathetic story on some level, which is kind of like, it's sort of a, I don't know. Is there a good example from cinema, James, of a character? It's like a Snape kind of a thing from Harry Potter, where you're just like, oh, he's a villain. I don't like that guy at all.
But then you learn some more about him.
And then you find out, it's like, oh, man, he just had a weird stalker crush on Lily Potter the whole time.
Yeah. He was just a very socially awkward kid who had a really intense crush, and the girl was always nice to him, so he never let it go.
Yeah. And you're just like, okay, so maybe he's not as bad of a guy. So you develop some like sympathy.
And he's not a Death Eater. He's a triple agent.
And and it's a little bit of that in the draft process with Shedeur. So now when I see what's happening with Shedeur Sanders, by the way, you saw the ticket prices for his start. It was the top draw in NFL preseason was watching Shedeur Sanders get his first NFL start.
Not surprised at all.
Whether you love or hate that, that's something. And then, he throws a touchdown pass, and it humanizes him in a way that he did such a poor job for his entire college career. And in every opportunity to have a camera in front of him, he made himself look more aloof, more holier than thou, more superior to everyone around. Every opportunity he had with a camera in front of him, all the way through until that humbling moment in the draft, and even after the humbling moment in the draft, his first comment was, "We all know this should not have happened."
Yeah, it's
not like and I don't know what the right thing to say there is. Maybe that's not the
maybe
wrong
just
thing to
nothing. Like maybe just I'm gonna get to work.
So him going nuts over a preseason touchdown pass is a humanizing thing that brings him back to the level of like a Karene Reed and reminds you that when you strip away a lot of the layers and you strip away a lot of the fancy cars and the jewelry and stuff, he is a 20-something-year-old guy trying to live his dream. And we all have to get behind that on some level. So
yeah,
I'm okay with whatever.
Yeah, no.
But back to kind of what we were talking about. For Utah football to have a chance at being what I think they can be this year, they need to be more successful in the turnover margin, because as optimistic as we are about this offense, you have to be realistic in that this is not going to be a passing offense that explodes, that bursts off the page, that generates insane numbers. And other teams are going to have that. Other teams in the Big 12 Conference are going to have explosive passing games. They're going to have quarterbacks with big passing numbers. They're going to have touchdown to interception ratios from their starter that are 3-1, that are dang near 4-1, like you saw last year with the top quarterback in the conference, which of course was Shedeur Sanders. But if you look at just the guys that are coming back, take Shedeur out because you're all sick of hearing me talk about him. Josh Hoover, 27 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He's back at TCU with some very weird social media rumors surrounding him that we have not even touched on this show, and I have no interest in touching on this show. Baron Morton from Texas Tech, 27 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. 24 touchdowns, 1 interception. He had a 4-1 touchdown-to-interception ratio. So your turnover margin, if you're Utah, has to be better than it was last year. So I'm setting an over-under at 1.5 in the positive. There have been years where teams have marginal success even with negative turnover margins. It's just not something that you see a ton of. Last year, Utah was -4, which was tied for 9th place in the conference. UCF, Oklahoma State, and Houston and West Virginia were all tied at the bottom with -8. Arizona State won the conference with 14. There are certain numbers that matter more than others.
Where did you say BYU ended up? Because it seemed like they forced a ton of turnovers.
BYU, interestingly enough, forced a ton of turnovers, but they also gave up a disproportionate amount of turnovers.
Oh, okay, so the margin wasn't all that great.
They led the conference in interceptions by a pretty significant margin. They had 22 interceptions on the season last year. BYU then recovered, let's see, how many? They had 29 total turnovers. They recovered 7 fumbles. They intercepted 22 balls. They had 29 turnovers total, but they also gave up 21 turnovers.
Okay, so
which put them in +8, which is good enough for 4th in the conference.
Yeah, okay, so that's still really good for the conference.
But then look at BYU. This is a great example. Look at BYU. In one-score games last year, they were 6-1 in one-score games, even though they turned the ball over 21 times. If they had turned the ball over 21 times and you had brought them down to the conference mean, like you brought them back to the pack with those interceptions, the next leading interception team in the conference was Arizona State with 16. So let's say that BYU only has 16 interceptions instead of 22 interceptions. And I'm not doing revisionist history if you're Cougar fans out there listening. I'm just saying
we're not taking any credit away from that team last year. I'm not taking credit away from you. Absolutely not.
In fact, I'm giving more credence to why this number matters so much, because if you don't get those interceptions, if you're not that opportunistic as a defense, if your guys don't make those plays, you're not 6-1 in one-score games anymore. You give an extra possession to your opponent in however many of those games, even if you come back to like number 2 in the conference, you lose 6 turnovers. And guess what? That's going to lead to losses. So this is drastically important for the University of Utah. You have to be ball hawking. You have to be putting your hat on somebody's hand while they're running with the ball. If you're the second guy there, you better be punching the ball out. You better be driving your face mask right into the fingers that wrap over the end of the ball. You have to get that thing out of possession. And then if you're the third guy there, you better dive on it instead of doing something cute and trying to scoop and score. Like, this Utah team needs to be better in turnover margin next year.
And Utah, how many turnovers did they have as an offense last year? I remember you saying earlier this week 17 interceptions.
They lost. Yeah, they threw 17 interceptions. They gave up the ball 22 times.
Okay.
Only Houston gave up the ball more than Utah did. Houston and Oklahoma State. So the bottom dwellers of the conference last year, and Utah was in the middle of the pack.
But that's only one more than BYU had. If Utah has anything close to the turnovers force that BYU has, it might have been a drastically different season.
Utah intercepted the ball 12 times last year. That's 10 fewer times than BYU did. And they gave up one more turnover than BYU did. Look at Utah in the one-score games. Look at BYU in the one-score games.
It matters.
You can make an easy case that the difference is right here in turnover margin. BYU +8, Utah -4. That is a 12 turnover swing between those two teams, and both of them were involved in a lot of tight games last year. And we do the thing where we point to Utah's offense and you say you can't score in the red zone. You didn't give us the yardage that you needed. Correct.
All fair, by the way.
Correct. Yeah. All fair criticisms. You know which one might be as damaging? Is the fact that you turn the ball over 22 times. Even if you're bad in the red zone like you were last year, even if you only score 7 rushing touchdowns last year, your defense was so damn good that if you don't turn the ball over 22 times, you win maybe 3 of those 5 one-possession games.
And you're a bowl team.
And everything is different. Yeah. Every conversation is different.
We're still not feeling very good about last season because of the expectations, but you're not feeling as badly as you did.
So I set the over-under for interceptions.
And who knows, sorry to cut you off, who knows what kind of impact that would have had on the mass exodus in the transfer portal that had happened. Maybe, I'm sure you still would have had some of those guys leave, but probably less if you're a winning team. I don't know. We won't get into that. That's a whole other show.
I set the over-under on interceptions at 12.5 because you need more than you had last year. 12.5 interceptions for the Utah football defense. Here's the thing. That's a very, very attainable number, especially for a team that has a long history, a decorated history of NFL caliber corners, NFL caliber safeties. Linebackers can get interceptions. D linemen and D ends can get interceptions. We've all seen it when Paul Kruger drops back instead of rushing, snags one out of the air. Nate Orchard did that. Hunter Dimmick did that, for hell's sake. That's not an unrealistic number. The interceptions last year in the Big 12 Conference, BYU had 22, Arizona State had 16, Colorado had 15, Iowa State had 15, Baylor 14, Texas Tech 14, Kansas, Utah, Houston, and Oklahoma State each grabbed 12. I don't want Utah's defense to be in any neighborhood realm with Kansas, Houston, and Oklahoma State, ever. Respect to the Cowboys, actually. They've had some really good defensive years, but last year wasn't one of them. So if you hit the over on 12.5, that's only 6. Utah's decade average for interceptions per season, even in the years where you weren't so great, where things weren't so wonderful, your decade average, you would have hit the over if I set it at 14. 14.2 interceptions every year for the last decade is the average for Utah football. That would have been good enough. That would have been good enough for 4th in the conference last year. So, there are your over-unders. And the interceptions and the turnover margin, while they are defensive stats, turnover margin is certainly influenced heavily by what the offense does or does not do. And it is as crucial as the conversation we had about points scored for the offense and points scored for the defense. There's a timing element here as well. When do the turnovers happen, obviously? Because if you pad your stats by getting a bunch of turnovers against another team's backups because they're up 3 scores on you and they turn it over because they're third-string guys who don't know what they're doing, doesn't count. So you need these turnovers to be timely. That's another reason why what you saw from BYU last year, their overperformance to expectation, you got to give a lot of credit to not a lot of the credit. You got to give pretty much all the credit to the defense, because what they were able to do was create turnovers in situations where they needed turnovers. When the game was on the line, when the game was tight, they were able to make some things happen. Historically, that is very much a Utah defensive trait. And I'll say it again, much to your chagrin, all of our Utah listeners. The reason BYU is good at it now is because BYU's defense is coached by Utah defensive coaches. Those are guys who learned it on the Hill, and now they're teaching it in Provo. And that's the nature of the business, but that's why BYU is so good at the thing that Utah has been so good at for a decade plus. And when I say a decade plus, I really mean 2 decades plus. Anyway, got to take a break. Show today is brought to you by Big Willie's. That's always the case. Check them out at 1717 South Main Street. Beth Lanier, Utah volleyball head coach, joins us next. We got a lot to talk about. Her ranked team in action. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Our VIP kickoff party for Utah athletics season is happening right now at the Broadway studios, and we're lucky enough to welcome head volleyball coach from up on the hill, Beth Lanier. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate you having me. I'm doing well. You know, it's middle of preseason camp, so a little busy and a little crazy, but things are going well.
Okay, tell me what that actually looks like. I think a lot of sports fans now have some sense of what preseason camp means in baseball because we see spring training, in football, obviously, because we talk about it ad nauseum. What does it look like in volleyball? Are you doing two-a-days? Is that allowed anymore? Was that ever part of things?
Yeah.
Tell me how it goes.
Yeah, it's pretty intensive. You know, we have to get a lot accomplished in a short amount of time. We don't have a big lead up to our season. And so it definitely involves 2 prices a day. But we've all, coaches have gotten smarter. And so we go a little bit lighter in the morning and try to keep usually no jumping in the morning and just all the ball control. And then we get after it in the afternoon session. They did allow us to start a little earlier this year, which has been nice. We've had a little less two-a-days and just been able to spread it out. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy. Normally we have about 2.5 weeks to get ready, and it's not enough time, but that's the NCAA issue.
Okay, so 2.5 weeks is all right, you can all be together. Coaches can be communicating with the players, whatever, as much as you want to be. What does the off season look like for your girls? Are they doing player-led practices and things like that? Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have summer access to them, which is another crazy thing. Some other sports that don't play until the winter have summer access where the coaches can work with the athletes during the summer. And for whatever reason, we don't have that. So our athletes are great. Almost every top-level volleyball program in the country is having, captain-led practices. And they can work with our strength coach, and they have access to, our nutritionist and mental performance and trainer, just not the volleyball coaches.
Why would winter sports have access in the summer to their athletes, but not you?
Because it's basketball, Sean. Come on.
Fair enough. Because it's a revenue-producing sport.
Well, is it? No. I mean, there's not a lot of revenue producing. No, I think it's been a cost-saving issue in the past.
Okay.
Not to bring volleyball, players back early, but the thing is now is with every Power 4 school, all of our athletes are on campus all summer on scholarship, a lot.
Sure.
Of them. And so, yeah, I think we got to get that changed anyways.
All right. Well, we're not here to do that today, but I do like hearing, we were just talking before we came on. You've been at the University of Utah for a long time. I mean, we talk about Coach Witt in his 21st season as the head coach in college football, as you're well aware. That's an insane amount of longevity. And you're probably looking at him like, this young rookie, he hasn't been doing it nearly as long as I have. Season 36.
Yeah, I actually we went to a fundraising thing down in St. George together in his first year, and we flew on a little plane together, and we actually had a really good conversation about, he was in his first year going, Beth, this is a lot different than it was when I was an assistant. And I said, yes, it is. So, he's a youngster. As I told you, off air, I'm not sure how it got here, but it's just been a labor of love to be at the University of Utah and run this program for this long.
Well, I'm sure you've had to answer these questions a lot in the past, but I mean, we beat up Kyle with these all the time too. Like when he took the job, and again, not quite as long ago as you took the job, the university was in a very different place. The sport itself was in a very different place. College athletics, in the macro sense, were a totally different business than they are now. And you've been through, I don't know, probably like 7 different eras of change at this point.
Yeah.
Making the adjustments can't be an easy thing to do. How have you done it?
Yeah. Well, I think the same as Coach Witt is you have to embrace change. And I think Coach Witt has done that very well, and I think it's been a bit of a key to my longevity is you just have to you got to figure it out. To me, change never scared me because even though I've been here 36 years, kind of an odd thing to say, but I always saw every year as a new year and different, and as all the different things were happening in collegiate athletics into the sport of volleyball, you just have to embrace the change, and it's kind of intriguing, right? It's, okay, there's a change. How do we beat that now? And certainly now in this era, it's a big challenge in front of all of the coaches and all the administrators and NCAA collegiate athletics. But you just got to lean into it, and you got to figure it out, or you're going to get left behind.
What's been the biggest change in yourself or your coaching style? Where's the biggest improvement been since, the early days to now?
Yeah. Probably, for sure, a lot more science-based. I don't do a lot without my sports scientists, and we do a lot with load management and trying to keep our athletes healthy. I think I've individualized my coaching a lot more, understanding that these players are individual, and I've got to get to know them as individuals, not just a player on the team, and so we've delved into that a lot and really trying to understand each athlete and what their needs are and how we can help them. So, yeah, maybe those two things are the biggest things.
Utah head volleyball coach Beth Lanier is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show ahead of the 2025 season, which I guess it's an exhibition game, but it starts in a couple of days. You guys are going to Texas to take on the Longhorns for some exhibition competition.
Yeah, we've actually never flown for an exhibition match, but Texas said they'd give us, a little bit of money, to fly down there, and I said, yeah, I'll take it. So we're really excited. It'll be a big challenge for us just 2 weeks in, and Texas volleyball is very strong. They have a lot of newcomers as well as we do, so it's just going to be a great opportunity for us to measure where we are against a big time program, and it's going to be a lot of fun. One of our seniors is from Austin, so that's great. But yeah, it's going to give us a lot of good information, and then we don't play a real match until another 2 weeks after that.
What does integrating newcomers on the roster look like in college volleyball right now?
Well, 3 of our newcomers came last January.
Okay.
2 transfers and a freshman. So actually, 2 transfers and 2 freshmen. So, yeah, that's really beneficial, just like football. If they get that spring with you, it's really quite critical anymore, especially with our short runway leading up to match time. But, yeah, I think, because we had a little more time this fall, we took it slow. We made sure that all the new players had a good foundation of our, technical things, our system things. Because we had 8 seniors on the team last year. So we have 6 freshmen, I think 2 transfers, and then a player that came over from the beach program, which we're excited about.
Is it easy in volleyball to make sure I ask this right, to prioritize in recruiting the areas of greatest importance? Like everyone you don't have a team if you don't have pitching in baseball.
Right. If
you have a bad quarterback in college football, you're not going to get very far. Is there an equivalent to that in college volleyball right now?
A little bit. If we call them skill positions, we would put our setter position in that mix.
Okay.
In that category. We'd also probably put our libero, the defensive specialist, in that category. And then you got to have your bigs. You got to have your people that can hit and block at the net. Good for us. We've got some good young talent in both of those 2 positions, and have recruited good young talent for the next generation. So I feel like we're pretty set in that area.
Do you find young women who are bigs specifically who are adept at the hitting but not the blocking?
No, not really. I mean, they have to have that skill set.
Yeah.
Certainly everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, but we're just trying to get, I think I've built this program probably similar to a lot of other coaches at Utah, in that, if we can just get athletes here, we feel like we can train them up. And so with your bigs, we have to have players that are playing high above the net. We just, I think we have a number of players that are touching over 10-5. I mean, they can, for sure one can dunk a basketball.
That's insane.
Yeah, and player last year, she's actually playing professional right now. I think she touched 10-9, and there's volleyball players that are touching 11 feet. I mean, that's probably the high end. So we've got to have big physical athletes playing at the net.
It's funny because every sport you talk to coaches, I mean, everyone wants athletes, right? When do you know, when you're looking at a prospect, that not only do they have the skill, because the development, what I understand of the development now, it's like, it gets pretty specific at earlier and earlier ages, right? And club volleyball is like this huge industry.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of skilled players out there. But when do you know, how do you know that, that 14-year-old is going to be as tall and as athletic as we need her to be?
We call it educated guesses in recruiting, right? Like, we see a lot of athletes that cross our radar screen, and so we're always comparing and contrasting, and who has the most potential. It's hard to know, but one thing I do know is that athletes get better faster. They just do if they have the right mindset,
Sure.
and they have to have a learning mindset, and we probably talk about learning in the first 2 weeks of anything we start more than anything, because some recruits come in and they flatline. They might be great in high school and club, but they don't get better. Some get worse and some get better. It's just the way it is, and usually they get better if they're athletic and they have a great learning mindset.
How many athletes have you coached that are second-generation Beth Lanier volleyball players at the University of Utah?
Yeah, just one.
Really?
Yeah, there's some of my former players have daughters that are playing in college, but
Sure.
they're not at the University of Utah. But yeah, Danny Barton, Danny Drews.
Yeah.
Obviously the daughter of Mickey Connie Barton, and she played for me in the early 90s. She played basketball
And volleyball.
She played basketball 4 years, and then she decided to join us for the last couple of years of her career, and she was amazing.
We talk about that. I mean, there are certain families in Utah athletics that are royalty, and the Bartons have become that. And you could make an argument that mom is the best athlete in the family because she was an all-conference athlete in both sports, right?
Kyle Whittingham always says that Mickey is the best athlete in that family, and I don't want my former player, Danny Drews, to get mad at me, but, her mom was a really, really good athlete. Great athlete. Yeah. They all are. That's the thing. They are royalty. Next year, assuming and respectfully, if Lander goes pro,
Yeah.
Lander Barton, they will, and everybody, the two older brothers are in the league still. They'll have 4 professional athletes playing professional sport at the same time.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, we had Danny in studio talking about her professional pursuits not so long ago, and we talked about her brothers. We talked about sort of the culture of that athletic family and how competitive they are with one another and things like that.
Yeah, did she tell you the family motto?
No.
Winners win. That's it. They talk about winning a lot in that family.
You can have that motto when you're a collection of athletes like that.
Exactly.
I suppose it's really cool. You got to coach mom and daughter, and
very special.
And at the same university where I guess brothers have played and things like that.
It's a very special situation.
That's really neat. This year's team, you've got one of the football coach's daughters on your team.
Yeah, Vonnie Key Powell
That's
is
right.
on our team. She'll be a sophomore, daughter of Lewis Powell.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we like to keep it in the family.
Does Lou ever come over and be like, "Hey Beth, come on"? Like he would.
No,
he seems like the exact opposite.
Yeah, I was
going
gonna
to
say, you know him. That's not what he's gonna do. We run into him at the dining hall and say hey, and he's just dad when it comes to that, I think.
The prognosis for the season, you guys are coming in with some high expectations. It's a good conference again in volleyball. The rival down south is going to be good again in volleyball. What are you expecting from this year?
Well, I guess let me set the stage. That we did lose 8 seniors from last year's team, and we had a great team last year. We were fortunate enough to get a top 16 seed in the NCAA tournament and host the first and second round, and we took 3rd in the Big 12, and they thought we were going to do a little lower than that. So, yeah, we go in with, I guess the way I explain this year's team is we do have a tremendous amount of talent. We have a lot of decisions to make. We have people still battling for positions, and I think it's just going to take a minute to put it all together. So I'm excited. I probably am as excited about this team as any team I've coached, honestly, because there's a good amount of talent, and now it's like, okay, well, it's my job to put it together and see how far we can get, and that's a big challenge for us. Like I said, we have a returning, first team All Big 12 and Cameron Gabadlo, and she was an honorable mention All-American. She was on the USA U21 team this summer. Emery Satuala Moeahi, she just got married, is picked as a preseason all-conference pick, and she's a great player. We had a freshman coming in that was on the USA 19 team. So we have a couple international players that we think can make a impact. So yeah, it's just going to be a matter of putting it all together. And it's going to take a little time, but I'm excited. I think the future is bright.
Do you have to build a fence around your young talent like athletes do in other sports because of the transfer portal and tampering and all that stuff now?
You know, all you can do is try to create the best environment that you can, and that they don't, so that they aren't looking to transfer. And that's what's in our control as coaches, and that's what we strive for every day, to have a lot of, a great culture, have a lot of pride in the program, that they want to be a part of this program for their whole career, and come back as alumni. And we have a rich tradition in Utah volleyball, and so yeah, we just try to get them to not want to go look around. And we've been very successful. In fact, the last 3 transfer portals, we're one of only 2 NCAA Division I volleyball programs in the country that have not had anybody go into the portal.
Wow.
And we're really proud of that. So
there can't be very many programs in any sport that can claim that.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, I got to ask this because we're always speculating about, Coach Witt. Is there an exit plan? 36 years at the helm is a long time. Have you decided or have you started to think about when you'll be done as the head coach at Utah volleyball?
I always joke around and say, yeah, I've been thinking about it for 10 years. That's a joke. Not really. I still got the energy. I'm still loving it. I think I'll know when I know. But right now, I'm just looking to the future. We had a great 2027 recruiting class, and and that's how you get to 36 years, right? You just are constantly excited about what's next, and I'm still there. So, we'll see. And I was only 6 when they hired me, so I'm not that old.
That's right.
It's my standing joke.
Yeah. Well, we're the same age.
Perfect.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming in today. I'll let you get back to the party and hang out with the rest of the Utah legends, but really appreciate you giving us some time here.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me a lot.
That is the Utah head volleyball coach, Beth Lanier. They're up against Texas in exhibition match 2 days from now. It's the Sean O'Connell Show. We got sound from practice, lots to get to on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. It's the Sean O'Connell Show. My FOMO is at an all-time high right now because we've got the VIP launch party for the upcoming Utah football season and athletic season with volleyball right around the corner as well. Everyone's out there in the cantina, we call it, at our Broadway studios. Just said hello to Coach Mack. Just so great to see him every time we get an opportunity to. Bill Riley is out there. Trevor Riley, as we talked about, is out there. We got Paul Pugmire in the building. Just everyone hanging out, having some fun. And a very special guest came into the studio earlier, James.
Yes, he did. My guy, my little guy, Owen is here. Little office party. This chance to show him off a little bit. So he's here. He was going to wear, you got him the most adorable Utes little onesie.
Yeah, it's like a Utes onesie. Yeah.
But it was 0 to 3 months, which like he's about in there wearing most of that now, but most newborns are wearing it right away. He was a little small for it. So we're like, I don't know if I think I joked on the air. I don't know if he'll ever be able to fit in it. He fits in it now. It's a little baggy. He fits in it well enough now that he was going to wear it, but then had a little accident as babies do. So he's in something else.
The best laid plans when you've got little kids, you always have extra outfits because they're gonna either spit up on one, they're gonna pee on one, you're gonna have a blowout situation. Which, by the way, if you ever go to like the UK or you go to Australia or whatever, they don't call the explosive baby diaper mess. They don't call it a blowout. You know what they call it? Like on television commercials. You know what they call it? A punami.
Punami.
Like a tsunami?
Punami. When your little one has a punami.
Yes, one night I was watching, I don't know, the Australian equivalent of MTV, and they were advertising Australian Pampers or whatever, and the leak guard lining of these diapers is like, #1 proven to prevent punamis. I was like, what?
That's amazing.
What is that?
Punami. Yeah. Like, unironically throwing that.
It was great.
Out.
I mean, it's amazing. It's a great characterization.
We might start using punami, and we have to use it in this voice every time.
I don't think that would be a big hit with our listeners. At least not consistently.
I'm sorry. I meant at home with the little.
Yeah, you should do that.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna do our best to try and keep things on clock because we had a good long conversation with Beth Lanier. A reminder to all of you that 31 Days of Football here on ESPN 700 is brought to you by Baskin-Robbins. We've got football conversation Monday through Friday, covering the Utes, the Big 12, the NFL, as football season in earnest is right around the corner. And then every Saturday leading up to the season opener, which is 17 days away now, we have classic calls. The next one will be Saturday, the Baylor game from last September. So thank you, Baskin-Robbins, for hooking us up with 31 days of football. We're almost halfway through those 31 days. I've got a Utah football question about who you think the most important non-starter, non-day one, game one starter on this team is going to be in 2025. We talk about depth at every position. You need depth at every position. If there's a name that you don't think is going to be trotting out on offense or on defense for the first snap of the season, but you think that person is going to be massively important to Utah's success in the 2025 campaign, shoot me the name at 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports on the tweet machine. Hour 2 begins next on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, who's going to be the most important non-starter on this Utah football team for the 2025 season? I think this is one of the more interesting questions we can ask. 9708 comes in with an answer. I think, excuse me, I think we're going to get a lot of. QB2, whoever that is the most important non-starter on this team. If the last 5 years haven't taught us anything, I don't know if we'll ever learn. You have to have 2 quarterbacks ready. If you're Utah football in 2024, you have to have 5 quarterbacks ready. In a normal year, though, 2 football quarterbacks that can help you win games is massively, massively important. Now, we've been talking about, probably not as much as we should, Devin Dampier's abilities and all that, but then who can most closely replicate those as a backup quarterback? I honestly don't know. A lot of folks will text in, call in, this Bird Ficklin kid, all other things being equal, you go with the younger guy. There's a lack of trust with Isaac Wilson. He was playing as a true freshman. Let's all remember that. It's a tough thing. He was not ever supposed to be the guy. He just wasn't, right? And while the truly professional approach as a backup is always, hey, I'm one snap away, and I'm going to make sure that I am truly ready. I am going to, in the offseason, in the film study, in the conversations with my coaches, and whatever reps I do get at practice, I am going to act like I am preparing for the Super Bowl, for the conference championship game, for a college football playoff appearance, because I am one snap away. It's easy for us to say those things. It's not human nature to actually put that level of care and attention and energy into preparation when you're the backup, right? And so I think if we put the truth serum into somebody like Isaac Wilson, and maybe even to the coaching staff that was trying to get him ready, there was an assumption that we waited so long for Cam Rising to really get back, and now that we know he finally is back, we know he's the dude. We know he's the guy. So what happened to him was a fluke. It's not going to happen again. And now that we have this security blanket for all of us. Again, this is probably mostly subconscious, but they're like, we're good at quarterback. We have talent rising in the room in these young guys, but I don't think we're actually going to need to use them this year because we have Cam Rising finally healthy again. And that probably affected the way that Brandon Rose practiced and prepared, probably affected the way that Isaac Wilson went about his workouts. Again, not by any sort of malicious or lazy or whatever approach, but just because you're like, well, I'm not getting on the field. Look at that dude. He's one of the great leaders in program history. He's about to break all the records in the school record book. He's the guy. I have this 12 to 18-month window to really get myself ready to play, and then it didn't work out that way, and you're probably behind a little bit in what your progress might have been if you were told and everyone actually believed, hey, you're probably going to be playing this year. Yeah. You're probably going to be getting important reps this year.
Yeah, it reminds me of what the story Scott Mitchell has told about when he had to go in and take over for Dan Marino after Marino got injured in the middle of a season. Scott was like, I wasn't ready. In the NFL, it's different. Like, Scott ended up playing really well, but like he said mentally, I wasn't ready. I didn't think that I'd actually play as a Miami Dolphin because Dan Marino's the starter, and he didn't get hurt very often. But one of the things that he said was that's different from the NFL than college is the other reason why he probably didn't feel like he was ready. The starter gets all the reps. In college, they split it. They split the practice reps between, all the quarterbacks, two or three quarterbacks.
I mean,
kind of. It's a majority of reps goes to the starter, but like it's different. That's even drastically different. The NFL where Marino told him, no, you don't get any of my reps, rookie. Like that also made him feel like he wasn't totally ready. But yeah, like it's human nature when you've got a an established guy who's a program legend, franchise legend in front of you, you're like, yeah, I'm going to get comfortable on the sideline here because that guy's not going to leave the game.
I honestly think there's a big difference, even in the recruiting world, between guys that are told or guys that believe coming into camp as a freshman, like, hey, you're going to play. Or they whatever have this internal drive, this internal motivator. They're just like, no, man, I'm going to play. I'm not redshirting. Even if the coaching staff is like, that's our plan for you. If you flip a switch in your own head and you're like, no, I'm going to assume that I end up being on the field. I really think it makes a big difference for individuals. One of the reasons I admire Dallas Vakalahi so much as a player for this University of Utah football team, he was not supposed to play. He was a guy that was going to be mop-up duty player. True freshman defensive tackles at the University of Utah typically get, I don't know, probably 40 snaps the whole season.
You consider who's in front of him, Junior Tafuna, Keanu Tanavasa, like, I wouldn't expect to play if I was Dallas.
Not just those two.
There's more than that, too,
It was Tafuna, Vamahi, Tanuvasa, Fotu, all guys that were bigger, stronger, more established, more experienced, and people that Samote Pepa, like all of these guys, you should have been D-tackle number 6 at best, right? And for him to come into the program as a true freshman and be like, not only am I going to get myself ready, I am also going to do the nutrition and strength training and all that stuff to continue to improve that over the course of a year. That is not an easy thing to do. So the mentality of being a 2 that is still important to the team is something that, quite frankly, most people can't understand. I put myself in the category because you have to have a different approach mentality as a guy who's a snap away. And even if you know, like on paper, you're a snap away, when you're behind Cam Rising, you're like, well, it's going to take an injury. And injuries don't happen that often. Well, unfortunately, they did. Isaac Wilson gets pressed into service. There was a lot of rumor and innuendo, some of it probably unfair, some of it probably fair, about maybe he was less than ideal in his preparation, maybe that he did have some struggles with adapting from the high school sort of level of competition to the college level of competition. All very normal freshman stuff. But it all goes back to the point that 97-08 made. QB2 is the most important backup on this team. And just like QB1 is the most important player on the team, you're right, especially for a team with the recent history of Utah football.
Lot of PTSD in this fan base, man.
And it's crazy because really,
deservedly so.
Because really, it's been like, I mean, you had good luck for some of the seasons where Utah was at its best, and then you look at the conference championship years in the Pac-12. Cam Rising was relatively healthy in those years. The first year, obviously, he was healthy enough to play. He could have started every game that year. The coaches made a different decision, and you don't get to assume, especially with a guy who runs as much as Devin Dampier, you don't get to assume health.
No.
So
it's like
the Bird Ficklin versus Isaac Wilson conversation is one that if you were not installing a new offense, if you didn't have massive question marks about what that offense was going to look like with the talent on the edges especially, if Kyle Whittingham wasn't sprinkling in these little nuggets about Smith Snowden and Lander Barton are going to be playing offense for you, I mean, I think that the Bird Ficklin Isaac Wilson battle would be as major a talking point as anything else about this offense.
Yeah.
And by the way, when you're trying to make comparisons, you kind of have to say, all right, well, Isaac is now on the wrong side of the coin for a lot of people because his college reps were not ideal. Bird is probably everyone always loves the backup quarterback, right?
Well, it's potential over results in this case, right?
And for Bird, he doesn't have a resume that includes, situations in Power 5 football, Power 4 football, where not only is he probably pressed into service before he's truly ready, but he's pressed into service before he's truly ready with a less than ideal lineup around him.
Yeah.
With like, if you take any freshman quarterback in the country, and I'm not trying to be an Isaac Wilson apologist here, but if you take any freshman quarterback in the country and you say, all right, you got to start when you didn't think you were ever going to have to start this year. So you're going to be playing against the ones instead of playing against other teams, either their starters who are dejected and have already given up in the game, or you're playing against their second and third string guys. You're playing against their look squad. You're going to have to play against starters. Snap one, game ready, let's go, peeling the ears back, and they want to kill you. Okay, well, you know what? I can handle it. I was a winner in high school. I was a highly recruited player. I'm a kid with impressive confidence, and he is all those things. And then you say, all right, that's not all. That's not all. We're also going to shuffle your offensive line a little bit. And more importantly, we're going to take away for at least half of the games that you start, we're going to take away the best offensive players around you. There's some games where Mekhi Bernard's not going to be super available. He's going to get banged up. There's going to be games where Brant Keithy, who is considered your best offensive weapon, and we care most about him in terms of versatility in the play calling, you don't get to use him. Now you're the true freshman, and you're going, okay. But by the way, the expectation is still go out and win a conference championship.
Yeah, nothing's changed there. Like, yeah, I'm a lot more forgiving of Isaac Wilson in this past season than maybe a lot of people are, because of, like, even with all that, everything would have been ideal, besides Cam Rising's health. He's out there. True freshmen are still going to be true freshmen. They're still going to make mistakes. They're still going to miss open guys that Cam Rising doesn't miss, right? And like, that would have been the case even if the rest of the guys were healthy. But we have to remember, last year, most of the rest of the guys were not completely healthy. And he still was out there trying to figure it out as a true freshman, and honestly kept them in games. Like, the defense mostly kept them in games, but they were competitive enough. They were a lot of one-score losses. He did a lot better job than it probably seems like because of the win-loss record. And I would hope that he would get some of that benefit of, hey, he's got experience here, and he has probably learned a bunch from that between his last start last season and now. I would hope that would matter to Jason Beck and the quarterback's coach and everything, so that he gets the nod as number 2. But you can't help but see Bird Ficklin and go, he looks a lot more like Devin Dampier, and this offense is designed around a guy like Devin Dampier, so that might end up holding a lot more weight.
Let me throw a couple more names, because the correct answer, 877-353-0700, was already submitted. It is QB number 2 is the most important backup. But for the sake of conversation and having a little bit more fun, let's flesh it out, right? Other maybe not day one starters. I'm talking rotational players. I'm not talking about guys like the quarterback situation is the only time you really want to see quarterback 2 is if you have to. Everyone else on this roster that is a backup right now, you want to see them at some point to give the starters a little bit of rest. You want to see them because a guy twisted his ankle and has to come out and, get retaped or something like that. You want to know that there's depth on this team in the just in case. So, yes, the quarterback situation is exactly what, you need to stay focused on from a real perspective. But from all right, who else? Who else is going to help this team win that is not a day one starter? Meaning, when you trot out against UCLA with 11 defensive starters, Jonah Lea'ea is, I don't think, going to be one of them. I think your 2 defensive tackles that walk out for the first defensive snap are going to be Dallas Fakalahi and Aliki Vamahi. And we have seen it in recent years, especially Utah football having at least one more guy, ideally two more guys. And Carson Calfusi seems to be the one who's emerged. But again, he's young and he's a little undersized right now from a weight standpoint, not from a height standpoint. Jonah Lea'ea might be one of those guys who belongs in this conversation because, quite frankly, QB2, I hope we don't see you at all. Jonah Lea'ea, Carson Calfusi, we're going to see you, right? Your defensive tackles at the never, ever, ever in the history of Utah football have they played even their best defensive tackles every down of a game, every defensive snap of a game. They don't do it. Teams don't do that with their defensive tackles. I mean, Warren Sapp didn't play every down. Aaron Donald didn't play every down. And he was a guy who was in good enough shape to play every down.
Yeah.
And those guys still had a spell or two.
I wonder if what you think about cornerback room as well as some immediate backups, but you can flesh out your thoughts with defensive tackles. But I that's the next one I could think of too.
Well, the reason I bring up the defensive tackles first is because Utah defense has to be stout against the run in order to be the Utah defense that we're accustomed to. We talked about yesterday how you got to be a team that's proficient in the pass rush, that gets to the quarterback, that affects the guys that I was gushing about earlier that we were talking about. The Big 12 Conference loses the number one most productive quarterback in the conference in the passing game from last year, but number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 12 are all back. Josh Hoover, Baron Morton, Sawyer Robinson, Robertson, Rocco Becht, Noah Fafita, Avery Johnson, Sam Levitt. Those guys are all back. You gotta reckon with that now. So you got to get to the passer, but you better be good at stopping the run, or getting to the passer is not going to be as much of an issue because teams are just going to chew you up. You don't have a stout Utah defense against the run without a healthy, quality rotation of defensive tackles historically. This year, I think you have a third linebacker who's good enough to be a starter. So when you're running your 4-3 base, which in the Big 12 you get to occasionally, that's great because you have Jonnu Hall. Another guy, by the way, who probably belongs in consideration for this. I don't think he's a day one starter. I think UCLA is going to come out in a personnel package that dictates that you're running a 4-2-5, that you've got Smith Snowden and 2 edge corners, that you've got 2 safeties, and you've got 2 linebackers to go along with what I think will be Logan Fano, Dallas Vakalahi, Aliki Vimahi, and probably John Henry Daly. But at some point, Jonnu Hall, who's a starting caliber linebacker, we think and we hope, is a guy that comes in and he's ready to go, either in relief of Levani Damuni and Lander Barton or alongside Levani Damuni and Lander Barton because now the personnel packages dictate such. So his name belongs in that conversation. Got to be stout against the run, though. If all you have is Vakalahi and Vimahi, and Jonah Lea'ea doesn't step up, and Carson Calfusi doesn't step up, and any of these other guys that are a little further down the roster don't step up, then you're screwed. We'll continue this conversation. We'll give you some Utah practice sound, and at some point we have to get to a recent story published in The Athletic about NFL players, including one NFL future Hall of Famer, sure thing, one of the best to ever do it, being affected drastically, seriously, by a stalking incident. Wild stuff. The Sean O'Connell Show continues on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 792.1 FM. Our VIP party's happening to launch the Utah athletics season in the fall. We had Beth Lanier, the volleyball coach, on earlier in the show. We welcome in a Utah football legend right now who's always got something going on in the football world. Trevor Riley stops by. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Sean. Great to have you on. I was telling your producer that I still have nightmares about that fight in Orem. Okay, I still do, man. It was Rock'em Sock'em Robots in real life, and it really turned me off from ever wanting to get in the ring, to be honest with you.
Come on, don't put that evil on me.
No, it wasn't that. It was art. Okay, it was art, but it's like abstract art, right? It's one of those things that's a Picasso of fighting. It's a legendary fight. Everybody look it up. It's one of the great fights that you'll ever see. It
was fun. Shout out Trevor Carlson. Hope you're doing well wherever you're at right now. Yeah, we smashed each other. You know what's the worst part about that fight? So people who were there at whatever it was called then, but the UCCU Event Center, I think it is now, it was a great night, great fight, back and forth battle. I hit him with everything but the kitchen sink. He hit me a bunch of times and rattled me a little bit. And I was like, the reason that was the game plan is because in the lead up to the fight, it was like, hey, this kid was a state champion wrestler in Nevada or something.
Yep.
So, you got really good striking. Just strike
it
out
off
with
the ground. Stay off the ground, right?
Like, don't try and take him down. I was like, cool. Back in those days, my back was still healthy enough where I could take people down. And I was like, all right, you know what? I like fighting stand-up anyway. And so that's what happened. Thankfully, I got the win. But it was a grueling, long, crazy, hard fight, right? And then he didn't get to fight for a long time. There was issues like, we both went the next day. I actually saw him they sent us to get MRIs on our brains. Mine came back totally normal because I have a skull that is made of concrete. And I guess his came back with something that was outside of normal.
Yep.
I don't know what it was, but they were like, no one would clear him to fight for several years after that. And then eventually, when I'm fighting in the UFC, he did get cleared to fight. And I went and watched his fight. It was here at the Maverick Center or something. And the guy who he was fighting then took him down and submitted him in 2.5 minutes. And it wasn't because that guy was like anything special on the ground, but I was like, what? I'm a moron.
Yeah.
I did it the hard way.
You could have saved so much time, dude.
Saved so many brain cells.
Oh, my goodness.
And so much anguish. But anyway. So, you always got to know what you're up against. Know your enemy, and you will not lose in 1,000 battles. That's what, Sun Tzu?
Sun Tzu.
Anyway. It's really good to see you. It's good to see you still in the football world. Utah Islanders GM. I heard you talking with Spence Checketts on his show the other day about it. Now you're also involved in the University of Utah Players Association, right?
Yep. We went official a couple weeks ago with that.
Give me a sense of your goals with that.
Well, I think first would be to get health care. Okay, there's a lot of guys struggling out there, not because of any one particular reason, just life happens, right? And Sean, when you're overtrained, okay, and you go out into the real world, it's a different world out there.
Sure.
And we're not military people, okay? We're not trying to equate that to anything, right? We're not talking about any PSD, a murder, or war or anything like that. But just when you're in a locker room, right, your whole life, and then it's over, right? Now what? And so that is a struggle for some guys. And also life happens. You have guys who just go through stuff. We want to be there for them, right? Greg Newman was a big wake-up call for everybody. And Greg was a personal friend of mine. And Chris Camerani had a great story about that. We touched on it last week. But, I mean, that pretty much says it all. We don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
In addition to that, on that side, we want to help the school we need to raise money for the school, okay? And who better to do that than the players? Mm-hmm. I mean, the Crimson Club is great, don't get me wrong, but if we can find some synergy, right, if we can get our ex-players together, right, and get the Crimson Club, you can see where that's headed, right? And then private equity is always being talked about. So there's a lot of things it's the wild, wild west. And so we just want to make sure that we have a voice and that we're helping the school.
You were at the University of Colorado and doing some things, and people have heard the interview. If you haven't, you can go find the archive at ESPN700sports.com and just search Trevor Riley under the link, and you'll find his conversations talking about, your adventures in Saudi, trying to get some funding for Colorado and things like that. And I'm glad we have you sitting here because whether it was for Colorado or it's people trying to do it for USC or it's this billionaire oil tycoon who's given all of his money to Texas Tech, it does change the landscape of college football. And it is for some people that played in your era or played in my era or played before, it's either hard to swallow or it's something they don't fully understand, and they think it alters, the locker room dynamic and things like that. But you've been part of it, in a way that none of us have.
Yeah.
How much different is it when it comes to that stuff?
Well, when I was at Jackson State, we got there in the spring. Not to just go back in memory lane. Let's go back to COVID. All right, COVID happens in FCS D2, D3. They don't have a season in the fall. Remember that we had that abbreviated 6-game season in Utah. I'm at Utah. We do this season. I tell Coach Witt, hey, I want to take a sabbatical. No, they're paying me $1,000 a month. I'm working for free basically on scholarship. We're just trying to get your foot in the door. Because, again, going back to the UPA.
What happens with GAs, right?
That's what happens. I was finishing my degree, and then you just kind of hang on for a few years. And I was, do I want to coach or what do I want to do? And so an opportunity comes up. You can go to Jackson State for the spring season. So initially I was just going to go for 3 months.
Okay.
So I get there, and the team, it's hodgepodge, right? New coach. They didn't have a season. So we patchworked this team together, and I wasn't a part of that. They patchworked it. We get through a 6 or 7 game season or whatever it was. And so now the fall happens, all right? We cut a large number of kids. This is 2021.
Wow.
So we cut probably 30, 40 kids. They weren't the standard that we thought they should be. And then that's when it started, okay? We started building a roster, and then we knew the money was coming. Our defensive lineman, you can look this up, Antoine Owens, first ever NIL deal, 12:01 a.m. And that was the genesis. So we started to see, wait a minute here. We all played pro football. There was about 7 of us on the staff that played pro football or involved in it. It was easy at that point. Now, the hard part was telling kids, we're cutting you, and there was administration and families like, what are you doing? But Dion, to his credit, was ahead of the curve. Okay, he saw what was coming. And so we went in, and in the second year, we cut 60 kids, and that was at an FCS. And then we get to Colorado, and we cut 70, okay? And no offense to that roster. They went through COVID, but that was the worst roster I've ever seen. Relative to the level it was at, that was the worst roster I'd ever seen the spring of 2023, I think, Colorado.
I was working and we were covering Pac-12 football for SiriusXM, and that conversation was had that this Colorado team, the one that Dion took over, is potentially the worst team of the, I think it was 133 at the time that were D1 teams.
Yep.
Like worse than we're not talking about worst Power 5 team.
Yeah, they were the worst.
This might be the worst roster that exists, and respect to Carl Durrell and all those, but like what they were doing, there were players there that wouldn't have been able to walk on at the university.
Well, just to give some perspective to the great state of Colorado, which I love. I'm still a resident of Boulder. I still love the great state of Colorado. We don't get kids out of Colorado, Utah. Go look that up. When's the last time we signed high school kids out? We don't do it. You'd think that'd be a nice little marriage there. They're next door. Mm-hmm. It's a 40-minute flight. We don't get kids out of there. Okay, so there's that thing. But then COVID, right? And Carl, I played for Carl with the Jets, so I'm never going to disparage him. His son Chandler's a friend of mine. It just happens sometimes, It kind of, if you lose 1 year, then it's 2. That's why it's so imperative you can't have a losing season, because it exponentially gets worse. And so we go back to Texas Tech. You talked about money. Money talks now, okay? And this isn't pro football. This is more like the pro baseball model. There's no salary cap, and if you got money or you don't got money, that's the storyline. And so going into this season for the Utes, they got a little bit of money, okay? That's where everybody kind of knows we're kind of in that path where we're going to see here in the next 2 years, are we going to go to the way of Texas Tech where they're buying every year, or are we going to develop and sell? And it's just economics at this point, supply and demand, right? We need more money so we can get more players.
By the way, that develop and sell thing is actually not develop and sell where you get any money.
Yeah,
it's
lose.
Develop and you're the Oakland A's. You develop and you decide we can't pay what the Yankees can pay. We can't pay what the Detroit Tigers or the Boston Red Sox are going to pay. And it becomes a miserable situation for the fans. I'm not as worried about that as some other people are, but it's not a non-worry either.
No, it's not. And Robert Blecken, credit to him and his staff. They've done a tremendous job, all things considered, navigating a new landscape, right? Dealing with an administration where, let's face it, administrators are mostly, not active lawyers and bad gym coaches or old gym coaches running a hedge fund now. Okay, this is a $100 million a year athletic department or more in some cases. And I saw a report that it's the most valuable athletic department in the Big 12. And so we have to be prepared to treat it as such. And right now we're kind of, we're feeling our way in a little bit, right? We're going to see, because we don't have those big hitters yet that BYU and Texas Tech have. Or if we do, they're kind of waiting to see. The last 2 seasons we've been unlucky in some ways with injuries, but we have not been able to return on the investment of some of the private money that's been flowing through here, if that makes sense.
More of a big picture conversation, and one that is, I don't know, it's a little bit different now. The era is different. You played in a time where if you had chosen to transfer, you would have had to sit out, right? Now that's not the case. But also, you played in a time where the program was still making adjustments to being in the Pac-12 conference.
Yep.
And you were a really good, productive player on teams that didn't end up with the win-loss record at the end of the season that you wanted to see.
Yep.
Right? Look, when you're a bad college football player, you're just happy to be there. When you're a good college football player who's going to go to the pros and is a guy who's doing what he's supposed to do, and double-digit tackles for loss and approaching double-digit sacks and 100 tackles in the year, it's got to be frustrating to look around and not see those team results that you're looking for. That's what every player on this Utah team experienced last year. Tell me what it's really like.
So that's a great point. I talked about that kind of with Spence. My era was the transition era. I played in the Mountain West, 2010, 2009. I saw the dominance, right? I was there after the Sugar Bowl year. And then in the Pac-12, our first year, we had a little success. I was talking to John Hayes yesterday, by the way. He's at Butte College, right? We were reminiscing a little bit. He's been helping me get some players, and he's done a heck of a job. Look at his resume. He can really coach. But anyways, the problem was always this. Are we trying hard, or are we just not good enough? Okay, those teams, just to be frank, very low talent level. And when you don't win, you don't get looked at as much. I felt like if we would have won 8 to 10 games and I had another game to, a bowl game to showcase myself, you probably rise a little bit in the draft, right? There's a better chance of that, especially 10, 15 years ago. I think going forward now, it's a weird thing because eventually I think you and I would agree, maybe you wouldn't, but I think most would agree, there's going to be some legislation that comes down on this. Anytime federal dollars are being thrown around and there's improprieties, the feds step in. They did it with the NFL at one point. They've done it in other sports. So they did it with the NCAA even back in the 40s when Notre Dame was hoarding players and Army and Navy were winning all those championships. And they had 200 guys in the team, right? And they wouldn't play, but they were making sure nobody else got them.
Sure.
So to move forward to where we're at here, okay, we have a great opportunity this season, Utah, because everything's in line, dude. The line is huge. The defensive coordinator is the best in the country. We got a guy going both ways. We got a quarterback. They ran for 3,000 yards last year, and he put up a bunch of passing yardage. We got an OC who's super confident, and he's got some swag about him, right? He's got kind of that Mike Leach swag where he's like, hey, man, we're going to score on anybody. We don't care. I think everything lines up to have a great season this year, all things considered. The money's another side issue because as we saw with Arizona State last year, they came through, dude. They came through with not that big of a budget. They really came through.
I mean, and I love that. I don't love that Utah had the bad season they have. I love the story of the Arizona State season last year because we all love a good underdog story. But if you had followed Kenny Dillingham's career, which I had because he's a Pac-12 guy, right? He was not just grateful to get a head coaching opportunity. This is his dream job. He was overjoyed to be coaching in the place where he became a college football fan.
Yep.
And he famously became a football coach when he was 17 years old because injury kept him out, and his coach was like, you know what you're doing, though. Why don't you help me out coaching the team? He found his calling in life, and he found it in a place where really, I mean, it's home for him. I think you would have to pay him $25 million a year to pry him out of the valley now.
Well, he has a great spot, too, because another thing, he has a great airport. And I used to say this to Dion about Colorado. I said, this is the biggest airport in America, you can get anywhere. And guys, don't think that doesn't matter, right? When you have offers, we're the same, right? The offers are pretty much the same for the high-end players, right? Rarely do you get outbid for the high-end players. But access, right? People want to go see your games. And Arizona State, I think, watching their season last year, they got the running back from Sacramento State. Credit to Troy Taylor on that kid. They get the quarterback, right? They get all these guys, and they patchwork this team together, and they put out a product that was not only good, they were fun to watch, man.
Yeah.
They were tough.
And the ability to do that with guys that were rising. I mean, I've said it before. If I was a college football coach now, I think that I would make my recruiting classes up almost exclusively of dudes who were under-recruited, missed on, and ended up at the FCS level or ended up at, a group of 5 level and overperformed those expectations. Number 1 overall draft pick this past year was one of those guys. the Heisman Trophy winner doesn't count as one of those guys because he should have gone to it.
Yeah, but he went the path, though. He walked the path of that. Even though he shouldn't have, he decided to walk that path.
But there's just something about those players. It's actually harder to find the success stories of dudes that bounce back, right? They go from LSU to Ohio State or vice versa. Joe Burrow's a good example of that. But there's 50 guys that were highly recruited. You're a Florida State Seminole. Didn't work out there. Now you're going to go be a Texas Longhorn. Didn't work out there. Dan Lanning is dealing with this right now. This Jurion Dickey kid, former 5-star athlete at the University of Oregon, he had to kick him off the team. He had to suspend him indefinitely, a 5-star athlete, because it's a different path. So these guys like the Cam Scadaboos of the world that were a little bit overlooked and rise up the ranks, suddenly you're like, whoa, this guy is something special. He's had to prove it the whole way. No one's been powdering his butt and telling him how special he is since he was 13 years old. I like players like that.
Well, and it also ties into what we're doing with the Islanders. Okay? We're a Salt Lake Community College football team. We want to feed players to Utah and BYU. Okay, and if you look at the model that Arizona State did and what you're talking about, it's just farming. What you're talking about is farming players.
Yeah.
Let me get players who've already been in good, they're tough guys, been in good systems, been coached well, haven't been paid yet. They want a bigger stage. We want all those guys. We'll take them. That's a farm system. And so I think as teams get more organized, why would you not make a cartel with like Utah State and Southern Utah, right? Let's make a group together, right? Let's make it exclusive. Let's buy you. Let's marry you. Let's become partners. I don't know if that's going to happen, but if I'm a small school at Utah State, they got one guy on NIL there, I would bet, maybe two quarterbacks. How do you survive? What's the landscape look like for you as Utah State? And so as you start looking at it down the road, you're mentioning a model where why not go out and get guys that are at Weber State? Look what BYU did last year, Weber State guys.
Yeah.
They killed it. I mean, they increased their win 3 or 4 wins. Not only because of that, but that's part of the equation. So with the Islanders, with Utah, with BYU, with Snow College, right, with Utah State, Southern Utah, I think we're going to see where everything starts coming together, and it's like, this is our area, man. If you're in this system, you're in our area.
Can you hang out for another couple of minutes if we take a break?
Sure.
You hang out with me? All right. We're going to take a break here. Trevor Riley, Utah football legend. He got some access that we didn't get, so I'm going to try and pick his brain about what he's seen from this Utah football roster right now. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. All right, Trevor Riley might come back in. We'll have some more Utah football conversation. We got a VIP party going on right now, so not going to sweat it one way or another. We've got Canna Fan Fest coming to the heart of Salt Lake City for part of the Granary Live concert series on September 27th, and a celebration of cannabis culture, music, and community. One-day festival with live musical performances featuring Crooked Kings, Changing Lanes, Analia Brown, and more. Visit ESPN700sports.com for a full lineup of performances. Ticket links are there as well. All right. Little quietly breaking news in the NBA world as we get Trevor Riley coming back here into studio. The Portland Trailblazers have sold to the Carolina Hurricanes owner, who is also heavily invested in the rising pickleball league. He dumped $250 million into the alternative football leagues as well, and now he's just buying the Portland Trailblazers for $4 billion. The estate of Paul Allen, part of his will was that his sports property would be sold. He passed away in 2018. I'm sure people remember. $4 billion. The return on investment. He bought the team for a whopping $88 million, and he gets the estate gets the $4 billion return. Trevor Riley's back in studio. He could turn his mic on. Okay, go ahead.
I actually have a story about that guy. Okay.
About Paul Allen?
No, the owner from the Carolina.
Oh, all right.
Okay. Do you remember the AAF?
Yeah.
Salt Lake Stallions, Dennis Erickson and the boys. Okay. So I'm on this team, and our investor follows through, Charlie Ebersol. And so now this guy comes in and he bought our league, right? He took our gambling technology, which we had, our tracking technology, and he basically ransacked the league. He sunk it. Now he took the technology out, but that guy was involved in the AAF, also here locally. So interesting investor, this guy. I wonder what he's going to. I wonder if he's going to be a winner or if he's going to be a guy that's going to run the team like a business.
Well, we'll see how it plays out. He's diversifying his portfolio in sports, but not beyond sports, because that's pickleball, sport, hockey, sport, now getting into the NBA. And he's got Dame Lillard coming back to play for him on the home court. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But we're not here to talk with Trevor Riley about NBA basketball team sales. All right. Utah football, you talked about, the position this team is in. There's talent. There's a new offense with some swagger coming in. The offensive line, knock on wood, if that offensive line is healthy, it'll be the best offensive line that Kyle Whittingham has coached, most likely, at the University of Utah. But look, the Big 12 Conference has a bunch of teams that are optimistic about their outlook this year.
Yep.
When we went down to Big 12 Media Day, I was getting ready for it, reading all the preview magazines and seeing how many returning starters certain teams have and what Texas Tech brought in the transfer portal and what Colorado tried to do and what Baylor has done a year after Dave Aranda was on the hot seat. And I was like, you know what? There are 8 teams at least in this conference that I could see making it to the conference championship game.
Yep.
Utah's one of them, certainly. But separating yourself from that pack is going to be a lot easier said than done. You've seen this team practice. You watched this team scrimmage. At this juncture, are they ready to have the bounce-back year we hope that they're going to have?
With Utah, it's always been about injuries. I don't think we've started and finished the season with the same quarterback since 2019. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was Tyler Huntley. And that is really the story. And we talk about last year, right? You lose the quarterback, we kind of lost the team. We kind of all agree upon that. It was just kind of a letdown. I think we got it. I think we have the ability to do it if we can stay healthy, especially at the QB position. And that was offensive lineman. You talk about Lomo, okay? Caleb Lomo. He played for my brother at Highland. I called Jim Hardy and I sent him that guy. My brother sends me this guy. I got this kid. He's about 250, tall kid. And so anyways, I've been invested in these guys for a long time. This is kind of a storyline that we've been waiting to see, especially with these. Jaron Kump is a 5-star, okay, or whatever you want to go, a high-end 4-star. Lomu and Fano. So we got 3 big dogs who we've spent a lot of money on, and so we need a return on this investment. That means if the quarterback gets hurt, you know what I'm saying? We want everything to work. I think everything's lined up to where as long as we can get some good fortune, I think I was just talking to our VIPs. I see minimum 10 wins on the horizon. which will get us into the conversation about getting into the big boys show.
I mean, I think a 10-win year for the University of Utah. I foresee a situation where the eventual conference champion, which is guaranteed a playoff spot, is probably a 3-loss team.
Yeah, I could see that.
And Utah could be that team. I think BYU could be that team despite the loss of their quarterback. I think Baylor could be in that conversation. I think TCU, for hell's sake, could be in that conversation, and they're barely getting any love. So the parity, and we talked about this opening the show today. I've been setting these over-under numbers about what Utah needs to hit in certain like numerical goals in order to be where they want to be. And last year you had 12 interceptions. That's below the decade average for Utah football. That's well below what BYU did at the top of the conference with 22 interceptions. And, of course, the more important number there is your turnover margin.
Yep.
You want interceptions. You want fumbles forced, and you got to recover those things as well. But you also have to take care of the football. And Utah was -4 last year. To overcome a negative turnover margin and win a conference championship is almost impossible.
Yeah, and you talk about those plays. At Utah, we call them havoc plays. Okay, those are QB sacks, fumbles, interceptions, right, tackles for losses. And the reason why is that the game, when you really watch a game, right, if it's a 1 or 2 score game, it usually comes down to about 4 or 5 plays.
That's right.
Meaning you stalemate in pretty much everywhere else, but 4 or 5 plays, right? A tip ball pick, a guy hustles and, knocks a ball out, or, gets a sack on a 4th down, the big stop on a 2-point conversion. Those are the plays where supreme talent usually takes over. And that's what we're talking about here. Do we have enough supreme talent to win those 4 or 5 plays? Or you could say, well, BYU, they didn't have, well, sometimes you get lucky. And maybe BYU did have those guys, but we don't want to be in that place. We want to be in a place, and I think we are, where we go into a game where we say, well, if it comes down to 4 or 5 plays, we got better talent. And I think Utah, all the pundits are saying, we're kind of built like that this year. At least on paper, we look like that team that we should be able to beat. We should be able to win those 4 or 5 plays.
Lander Barton is a guy I spent all summer last year talking about what he could be for this Utah football team. He's the next Devin Lloyd. He's the next whatever great linebacker. He, by his own admission, ended up not being as comfortable coming into the year, coming off an injury, didn't trust the leg completely, and didn't get to that point where he was really playing like himself to the last 4 or 5 games of the year. Now, you take players at their word until there's a reason not to believe them. He said at Big 12 Media Days, he said in private conversation, I'm back, man. I feel good. I'm ready. The ceiling on this guy is way up there for me. Lander Barton, what should he be for this defense?
Just to give you some perspective on why everybody's so high on him, for those of you who aren't so familiar with him, Jim Harbaugh wanted this guy in the worst way. This was the guy he wanted. I coached his 2 brothers, and his both of them weren't better. Their best year was their last year. They improved steadily every year. If it scales that way, Lander Barton's poised to have an All-American season, and I don't say that lightly. Okay, his 2 brothers are dogs for me, so I know it's in there. His mom is a dog, Miki. His father was a dog baseball player. His sister is a dog volleyball player. I mean, they got the dog, as Dion would say. They got the dog in them, and so this is the year. We got to keep him healthy, and he's got to lead. All right, the leadership starts in camp right now. How tough are those guys? We got to be tough, Sean. Utah, we've always been tough as nails. We're run by a biker gang guy. Kyle Whittingham is an alter ego. He's Mad Dog, the biker gang man, okay? I could see him afterwards starting a biker club, a peaceful one. But this is our guy, all right? This is the mantra. This is a moniker our team has to be, and Lander is the guy. No one's talking about him enough. He's the heart and soul of the whole team. How he goes is how our team goes, in my opinion. And so I say that with all due respect to everyone else who's on the team and everything.
Of course.
But that's the guy, man. That's the guy that can make it happen. And I think that's a good thing because, again, I'll go back to Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh wanted that guy in the worst way.
Whoever was the Texas defensive coordinator when he was coming out, he and I were randomly ended up on a flight together. You can always tell when coaches are in the airport because they're always wearing their polo. Yeah. They're always wearing a ball cap. And it was – his name will come to me. But he was coming to Salt Lake City, and I was like, why is he's coming to talk to Lander Barton.
Home visit.
And as you're on the moving sidewalk in the airport, I was just like going to talk to Barton, and he kind of laughs. And he's just like, are you a Texas fan? I said, no, go Utes. He's just like, I'm not going to talk to you then. He was good-natured about it. But, like, that's a guy And look, he's played well in his career. Lander Barton is already worth the scholarship, worth the NIL deal, whatever. But this year that is the defining year of his collegiate career and is the defining year of his pro future, him being healthy, I think, is going to be one of the keys for this team's success.
Let me take it one step further. The best athlete in that family is the sister. Let's not get that twisted, okay?
Yeah.
Then I'm going to say Cody, okay? All right, and then Jackson. But he's fighting for a family legacy on the inside, right? Forget the money. Who's the best dog in this family right now?
Well,
I'm betting Lander can overcome the sister.
We had Danny in studio in that chair next to you, and I was just like, "Who's the best athlete in the family?" And she was like, "Oh, it's Lander."
He's on paper, but again,
he's the baby brother, so they're all nicer to him than they are to each other. You know what I mean? But the brothers have said that at different times. It's like, well, even going back to when they were playing, they'd be like, "Yeah, baby brother's going to be the best one." And right now, that, by the way, Lander, if you're listening or not, right now that's not true yet.
No, I'm telling you, Lander, you're number 3 or 4. Okay, so you got some ground to make up. Now you have a year. Okay, but I'm telling you, I'm challenging you, Lander. I want to see you be the supreme Barton of Utah. Okay, you got to be number 1 in the family. When you go to Sunday dinner, if you have a good season, you sit at the head of that table. I want you to take this family, young man.
I don't even know if it's possible because I think Mom was all conference. She'd played both sports. I think she was all conference in both sports. Lander,
money talks. First round pick. Okay, second.
Yeah,
the money talks in that family, baby.
Maybe that. Oh man! All right, we got to take a break. I got to cut you loose. Go and enjoy the rest of this party. Let's do this more often.
You're tough as nails. I'm scared of you. So anytime you call me, I'll say yes.
We're friends. You don't have to be scared of me. Actually, the most I've ever gotten in trouble in the media with the Utah coaching staff was because of this guy right here. You don't even know
I don't know this story. Did I say something outrageous or something?
No. You didn't say anything. It was when you were a player and media availability was at like after practice, and you had stuck around to talk to the media because you're always the guy who's willing to give time, right?
Yeah.
And everyone else has already walked back across 4 South in order to get back to the facility. And you're just like, "Hey, can you give me a ride?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And so you jumped in my car. I drove you over. It's a 32-second drive.
Oh, I'm sure they red taped you. What are you doing?
Yeah,
man?
and dropped you off at the facility. One of the GAs saw me drop you off at the facility. Next day, I get a phone call. "Hey, that's an NCAA violation. What are you doing?" I'm just like, "Give me a break."
You know what?
I gave a kid a ride for 300 yards.
How funny is that now? Think about that.
That's so hilarious now.
How funny is that, man? And just to say one more thing, and we got to go to break. I remember we couldn't have cream cheese on our bagels.
Hey,
we could not have cream cheese.
You know what? I'll one-up you because I was a walk-on. In those days, walk-ons couldn't get the team food.
I used to sneak it, baby. Okay,
Dude.
I used to walk out and Dave Fogergren. Here you go. Have a plate, dude. Have a plate.
How is Dave Fogergren?
I just went and watched him. He's coaching youth football, okay, and he just whooped up on Olympus Pop Warner on last Friday.
Hey,
I went and watched him.
Dave Fogergren, let me tell you something. One of my favorite guys to ever go through the Utah football program. Led the team in tackles what as a walk-on.
I liked him, man.
For like whatever, a 5-game stretch.
He did, dude. Dave was on fire, dude.
Great player.
He is. Highland High School. Shout out to Highland.
All right. Shout out to you, Dave Fogergren. Trevor, you're the man. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Sean.
Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700. We just had a great conversation, really a big portion of our Big 12 at noon, brought to you by Mountain Supply, was with Trevor Riley, who hopefully will be a larger part of the show moving forward. We're also going to have Weddle on throughout the season, trying to figure out what time is going to be best for our dog, and now the head coach of Rancho Bernardo High School, where his own son is emerging as a big-time college football recruit, even though he's only going into his sophomore year. So that's going to be awesome. I love getting the player-coach perspective on the changes that have happened, and Trevor Riley's a unique animal, well, because he's a very unique personality, and he's just a really interesting guy. But also, he's a dude, like we were saying, he kind of bridged the gap between the Mountain West days of Utah football and the Pac-12 days of Utah football. And those teams were a very foundational, a very important part of the foundation of what Utah football is now. Remember the grievance that I aired, by the way, James, about the Little League World Series and texting the iWatches with the pitch calls?
Yeah.
It was happening again earlier today.
Are you kidding
I
me?
just want you to know that.
Are you kidding me?
They didn't listen to my grievance. They didn't make a change based on my grievance.
Do none of these Little League coaches watch Major League Baseball? Do they know what happened to the Astros?
Ridiculous.
Anyway. Come on now.
Trevor Riley and those teams were important foundational pieces to what Utah football became, because we don't talk about this. I don't know if we've ever even talked about this on the show, and I repeat myself quite often. But when you jumped into the Pac-12 conference, and it was you in Colorado at the time as the newcomers, when you jumped into the Pac-12 conference, you were the lone riser. Colorado came over from what was the equivalent of a Power 5 conference already at the time. So you were the one making the step up in competition. And had it not been for guys like Trevor Riley, guys like Starlo Tulale, guys in those early days that were elite competitors that were worthy of all conference conversation and consideration, again, alongside Oregon Ducks and Washington Huskies and USC Trojans and UCLA Bruins and Stanford Cardinal, because remember, Stanford was humming at those times. If it wasn't for those guys, there's no success that begets more success. There's no, oh, look, this Utah football team, now that they're here with their place at the table in the big boy league, they're actually going to grow into something. I could foresee them actually winning this league. I could foresee them actually doing this, right? It's not something you can take for granted. TCU has done a great job of it, transitioning upward and being good at the next level. Utah has done a great job of it. BYU, for the first time last year, showed that they're capable of it. But there's actually not a ton of examples of teams that rise from one level, Group of 5 to Power 5, or FCS to FBS, and suddenly make a name for themselves, or not so suddenly make a name for themselves. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. Oh, and by the way, most of the time when it is done because that program fires a coach who got them there, and because they have a higher share of television revenue distribution, things like that, they get a little bit more money. Now they can pay a rising star coach who ends up being a wunderkind, ends up being like a talented guy, and that guy takes them from being the, oh, welcome to the big show, where you went 3-9, 4-8, 4-8, 5-7, 3-9, and then you fired the old guy, to now you're the dude who goes from 3-9 to 5-7 to 8-4, and it's because you, the coach, are something different. It's even more prohibitively rare that somebody drags a team from the Mountain West Conference or from Conference USA or from the Sun Belt into a power league and stays where they are and systematically builds and climbs until they are the class of that league. And by the way, on the way, leapfrogs over college football blue bloods. USC is undoubtedly a college football blue blood. And the last 5 years of the Pac-12's existence, Utah was the better program than USC. Take a time machine back to 1980 and tell a Utah football fan, someday you're going to be better over a half-decade stretch at least than the Trojans of USC.
I mean, I could go outside and grab Scott Mitchell, who played for Utah in the 1980s, the tail end of the 80s, when they were. I mean, he had to break a 9-10 year streak against BYU, losing streak to BYU, right? Like, so he knows about Utah football in the 80s. I'd be like, hey, would you have foreseen ever Utah over a 5-year stretch being better than USC ever? Being in the same conference as USC, first of all.
Yeah.
And then better than them once you're in that conference. I'm sure he'd be like, I would have probably liked to say yes, but there's no way you could think that.
If you go back, even if you ask like people from right before Trevor Riley, like,
yeah,
if you go back and ask, and I'm not
like
talking
2012,
about
2013.
I'm not talking about like the schlubs like myself that were on the team in 2005. I'm talking like the scholarship guys from 2005. All right,
Quinton Ganther.
Yeah, let's go find Quinton Ganther and Jesse Boone and Tommy Hackenbrook. Those guys were important players on a great college football team that could have slugged it out with pretty much anyone in the country.
You guys, I'll say you guys, didn't you famously say we want to play USC, who won the national championship that year? We think we can beat the national champion if you gave us a chance to play them. Like, so that happened to be a year where you were both awesome, coincidentally.
I think that year there were only 2 teams in college football that had a chance of beating Utah. I think that Auburn team that had Ronnie Brown and Cadillac Williams,
also an undefeated team that year,
and USC are the only 2 teams that Utah would not have beaten.
Was that the 3? Was it just those 3 that ended the season undefeated? USC, national champions, Auburn, who ended up ranked 3rd, so didn't get a chance to play for a national championship, and then Utah? I think that might be.
I think that's right, because who did USC beat that year? Oh, wait, there weren't national championship games.
Who did they play? It would have been the BCS national championship game. It wasn't Oklahoma, was it?
USC
2004.
2004 record. I think you're right, though. I think in any case, that's off our point. At the end of the day, the foundational pieces, and Scott Mitchell gets to call himself one, whether he does or not, he can, because
it was Oklahoma.
Okay, it was Oklahoma. Luther Ellis, Scott Mitchell, Larry Wilson, if you go back far enough, but like the Dyson brothers, some of these guys that were help putting Utah football on the map long before it was even there was a glimmer in anyone's eye that Utah could eventually be a Power 4, Power 5 football team. Those terms didn't even exist back then. It's just great to have that still be in touch with today's program. It's truly unique that Utah football gets to have its legacy connect back, because even though Kyle Whittingham is 21 years as a head coach, he's 30-plus years in the program, and he's still got relationships with the guys that he worked with and that he played with and that or played against, I should say. And, he's got relationship with Ron McBride, and Ron McBride bridges even further back. And so it's just he had John Pease on his staff, for hell's sake. And John Pease was part of, like, early glory days of Utah football before things got dark for a while. It's a fantastic thing that Trevor Riley and Sly and Matt Martinez and Darrell Mack and all those guys were up at a scrimmage this past weekend, seeing what their alma mater is going to be capable of in 2025 and jumping on board with the Players Association that hopefully will make meaningful change for the University of Utah. Players, first and foremost, but the program beyond that. We also had a conversation with Trevor about the thing that I started the show with. the turnover margin and the one-score games, the errors that you can afford to make that you can't afford to make, the luck that you have to rely on sometimes when you're a team that, the ball bounces your way, the tipped pass gets picked. For the last 2 seasons, Utah football has been snake bit in that regard. With injury especially, they've been snake bit. But they've been snake bit in that they're not the turnover-generating team that we came to sort of expect in its best years.
And it was deceptively so, because the big takeaway from last season still now is how great the defense was. It just wasn't great in that one category.
It's wonderful to be stout defensively and to give your team a chance.
The main thing is how good they were in the scoring defense, as you've talked about.
And by the way, it's almost an unfair thing. We're focusing on the defense this year. It's almost this week, I should say. It's almost an unfair thing to say, hey, defense that was second in the conference in scoring defense and near the top of the conference in all the important statistical categories except for turnovers generated. Hey, also, please be good at that.
Yeah.
Also have a great pass rush. It's like, guys, we didn't allow people to score. That's the job of a defense. We were doing our best to stop people from scoring. I'm sorry we didn't give the offense 10 extra possessions.
But that's the offense's problem.
I'm sorry we didn't sack the opposing quarterback 40 times, but we stopped other teams from scoring. So, like, I can't imagine in the quiet moments where players are gone from the facility and all the lights are off and the coach are just grinding away on tape at around the Knights of the Round Table situation, and anyone makes like an even offhanded comment about, oh my gosh, Cam Calhoun really should have picked that ball. If you're Morgan Scalley, and he's not this way, he's a much better person than I, but like how you don't just be like, you know what also would have been great? If you scored some bleeping points. Because we were one of the better teams in the country and one of the best teams in the conference at stopping people from getting the ball across the goal line. That's the job. Well, yeah, but we need more. I'm part of the problem, by the way, because I'm saying, hey, you need to create more turnovers.
So am I. I've probably been louder than you have been about that.
You need to create more sacks. Okay, cool. Also, it's kind of like if you went home, right? You're a man or a woman who slaves away all day at a tough job where you make really good money, okay? And you go home to your significant other, your spouse, your life partner, your kids, and you've got a really nice life, okay? You're a 2-car home. You have a nice lawn. Maybe someone else mows the lawn for you. Maybe there's a kid in the neighborhood who does it. Maybe
We're talking about real wealth here.
Maybe maybe your kids are in private school or something.
Oh.
And maybe they're just like, hey, you know what I would really love? I would really love if we also had a boat.
Or how about a private jet?
You're just like, hey, cool. Here's the thing. Your standard of living is in the 99th percentile for the human population of Earth. All right? I'm sorry I can't provide the boat. That's what we're doing to Morgan Scalley right now.
We kind of are. The first time right after the last year's BYU game, by the way, that you said, Cam Calhoun, how come you didn't intercept that ball? Morgan, that might have been that quiet moment you were talking about where he's like, KOC.
Yeah, you might have been like, you know what? Screw these guys.
Sean, my supposed friend.
We're doing a really good job, and not just the best we can. We're doing a really good job because the best you can is really all anyone can expect of you. But if the best you can is also better than most people can,
yeah,
it's probably good enough.
Yeah,
and statistically, it is good enough if your offense is even like average, is even like middle of the road. You would have been a college football playoff team probably last year. So if the defense is going to be better in this year, and I know people hit the over on how many yards this team's going to allow and how many points this team's going to allow, But if proportionally the defense is going to be better in any category, like we're calling for with sacks, like we're calling for with turnovers, it's really an unreasonable ask to say be better than you were. But Trevor Riley thinks they will be. On some level, I think they will be in
challenging them to be, at least in the case of Lander Barton.
And guess what? A lot of it is just going to be health related.
Yeah, that's the other thing that we completely overlooked. We completely overlooked about last season. So many. It wasn't just the offense that had a bunch of injured guys. So many guys, so many starters on offense or on defense played barely half a season last year, and they were able to do what they did. If they're to your point, if they're healthy, if they're playing double-digit games, the starters are, imagine how good this defense could be.
I said, what is this, 6 years ago now? Stanford football had two of the best offensive linemen in the country go down. They had the best running back on the West Coast go down. They had a tight end, and Stanford at that time was producing a bunch of NFL tight ends who got banged up and played like half the season. And best defensive lineman went down all in the same year. And I was like, that can't happen again. The following year, I'm sitting on radio with Jeff Schwartz, who joins us on our show frequently, and I'm saying, Stanford's going to be good this year. Look at what they've got. Stanford is going to be good. And he was like, yeah, Stanford is going to be good this year. Everyone's sleeping on them because last year they had that terrible year. Can't happen again. And then the next year, it was worse. 4 starting offensive linemen got injured. Walker Little, by the way, a guy who eventually was still a first-round draft pick, or was he a high second-round draft pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars and is a day one starter in the NFL, was one of these guys. He got injured 2 years in a row at Stanford and still was a high draft pick in the NFL. So one of the craziest things you've ever seen. He was arguably the best offensive lineman in his class coming out of high school. In any case, I was like, there's no way it can happen again. And it was worse the next year. And then I said, there's no way it can happen again. 2 years in a row. It can't happen 3 years in a row. And that was exactly when the transfer portal was starting to be a thing. That was exactly when
kind of the end
NIL,
of Stanford football as we know it.
And the craziest thing about it, James, was that if those 2 bad injury years don't happen for Stanford, everything, I will die on this hill. Everything is different. If David Shaw doesn't lose favor in Palo Alto because his teams hate him in the locker room, the guys just can't stand hearing his voice anymore because they're not winning, right? If you don't like your coach and you're winning, you grit your teeth and you bear it.
Especially at the college level. In pros, the players kind of we've seen a lot where they're able to mutiny against that coach even if they're winning. I mean, Gordy Chiesa likes to bring up the Bucks driving Adrian Griffin out of town when they were the first, second best record in the East, and they've been way worse since when they hired Doc Rivers to replace him. So that happens in the pros quite a bit. The players have a lot more power, but at the college level, it's absolutely okay. We're winning. It's only for a couple of years, then we're out of here.
So the idea that injuries can't happen 2 years in a row or 3 years in a row, it's like you flip a coin, right? And if it hits heads 7 times in a row,
no way it's going to hit heads again.
You would bet, most human beings would bet that, okay, the next one is going to be tails, because you think it just can't happen. But the odds are the same every time.
Yeah, it's 50-50 every time.
It's 50-50 every single time. So there's actually no real difference.
It doesn't matter what streak you're on. It's almost like a shooter in basketball. He's missed 7 straight, but it's either make or miss. Like every shot's 50-50, make or miss.
And that is my only concern, my only real concrete concern for Utah football right now, is that I'm going in with this level of optimism that is so firmly attached to better luck in the injury world, and an expectation that there's just no way it can keep going this direction. Even though I've seen it happen before. And that, by the way, destroyed Stanford football.
It did. You think – so that's interesting. You think if they have 2 really good years in a row instead of 2 injury-plagued years in a row, or even just one of those years is really good, like it was the rest of the Pac-12 era, basically, and pre-Pac and end of Pac-10 era with Jim Harbaugh, that David Shaw might have been able to convince Stanford and the administration that, hey, like let's relax our transfer rules a little bit here. Let's relax, because that was also like that. Well, that's been a big thing about why they haven't been able to adapt.
Correct. That is an issue, but here's the thing: Stanford was humming, right? And if you're humming, you don't need transfers as much as when you start to struggle. And look,
probably don't have as many guys leave.
I was dead wrong about this, but I said 3 years ago, Dabo Swinney needs to get off his high horse and start participating in the transfer portal like everyone else has, and he hasn't. He doesn't believe in it. I think he's brought in 3 transfers. On average, he was bringing in 1 transfer per year. I think this year it's 3 or 4, and
steady increase.
They're going to be a good team this year. Whether they're going to live up to the hype that they have, to be seen. But they were pretty darn good last year.
I mean, college football, back at the college football playoff years after you and I and others had written that program off because of those things.
I thought that Clemson was in an untenable situation where you had a guy who you could not fire because he had delivered national championships
recently.
And he was that you couldn't fire him. There's no way you can tell him, hey, get out of town. You couldn't even really demand his resignation because of what he had done. He had brought you back. He had put you back on the map of that borderline blue blood thing. He had stirred the echoes of your championship history, and he had put you at the forefront, and he had gotten you #1 recruits, and he had gotten you top 5 draft picks and all that stuff. And he put Clemson back on the national stage in a way that nobody had in the last 20 years before him, right? And I thought you had a situation where you couldn't fire him, but he was a guy who was not going to play by the new rules of the game, which would be a disaster. And guess what? That ended up being the problem at Stanford because of those injuries. Because Dabo got away with whatever weird stuff was going on because he found a way to win. Stanford couldn't find a way to win because the injuries got to be too much. And Stanford, I love telling you when I'm right about things. On the first day of NIL being a reality conversation, it wasn't even officially yet, but it was like, hey, this is going to happen. I crowed from the mountaintops on Sirius XM radio, on national shows, on my show, BYU is going to be the #1 beneficiary of this. They've got a bunch of rich alumni who would give their left eye to see BYU be successful. And I said, you know what? Stanford could be this. If they have even 2 or 3 of those guys who've got a degree from Stanford, just say, you know what, I want my football team to be good. I didn't know if it would happen at Stanford the way I knew it would happen at BYU. And with Stanford, I've been wrong because Stanford's got this multi-billion-dollar endowment. They've got alum with billions of dollars worth of power and billions of dollars worth of influence and billions of dollars worth of capital.
That really care about the Olympic sports, too.
But they just don't, they don't care about Stanford football. I've told the story on air before. One of my first social events in the Bay Area when I moved there, my friend Emily invited me to a fundraiser luncheon. This is pre-NIL era because her dad was a big donor, and she was just being welcoming and trying to integrate me into the athletic community in the Bay Area. I showed up. They threw a Stanford polo on me and were just meet the people here. James, the individuals that I was being introduced to, it was ridiculous. I was like, oh, I'm Sean. I just moved out here to take a radio job on one of the stations in the city. And I'm, talking to the guy about my dad's age, whatever. He's like, oh, hello, I'm so-and-so. I am the lead counsel for Microsoft. And I'm a big Stanford athletics supporter. And I'm just like, wait, what? The equity packages that people like that have could make Stanford football whatever they wanted it to be. Now, yes, you have to get people with the right test scores and the right grades. But they've fudged those rules for football in the past, and they continue to do it. But those injury-plagued years removed Stanford football from the consciousness of America.
Yeah.
And from the consciousness of their own alumni base to some extent.
And forced David Shaw out.
And it soured everybody in that community on the head coach. If David Shaw had lost his locker room, so to speak, but lost his locker room and players never wanted to come back and talk to him again, but guess what? They left on wins. It would have been fine. Like, Urban Meyer is not overly popular with former Utah football players from a hey, I want to hang out with you standpoint.
I'm sure it's the same case with former Florida players and former Buckeyes.
When he gets when Urban comes back into town, he takes a picture with the same 8 dudes that were on that team. Guys that he liked and guys that liked him. Maybe there's more that wish they could hang out with Urban. I don't think most people do.
So Urban's Robert California from The Office. He's just doodling names. You're just doodling. Oh, but you're also not on this A-list.
I could tell you. I mean, I could rattle off the names of who those people are. I'm not going to because I don't want it to come off as insulting or anything. Like they're former teammates of mine. They're friends of mine. They're cool guys. But it's like there's only a few of them that are in that club that they're just like,
group.
I got to see Urban and Urban's got to see me. You know what I mean? David Shaw would probably have at least that.
Yeah.
Where it's like only a few guys would want to see him and he would want to see them. But if you won, like Urban is never going to have to buy a meal or a drink in Salt Lake City because of what he did for the University of Utah. He never had those injury-plagued seasons. David Shaw did, and it spoiled everything. It ruined everything. And guess what? It did that for Utah football last year. You remember how many of you yahoos at the end of last year were basically demanding that Kyle Whittingham retire because his team was injured?
Well,
Do you remember how annoying I was at the end of last year when I was like, hey, this dude gets to retire whenever the heck he wants, and if this team was healthy, even a little bit more healthy, we're having a completely different conversation.
You can also switch Kyle Whittingham's name with Andy Ludwig. Ludwig did end up leaving the program, but it was the same kind of situation. It's like that guy's got to go when mainly it was not Andy Ludwig that was the problem. It was that they didn't have mainly the quarterback they thought they would have at the start of the season. Other offensive injuries too.
I'll quit ranting about it, but the only concern that you should have as a Utah football fan
is another injury-plagued year.
Is an injury-plagued year because when we've said, who's going to replace Devontae Booker? Gosh, he's so good. We can't replace a guy like that.
Oh, hello, Zach Moss.
Who's going to replace Zach Moss? We can't lose a Zach Moss.
Oh, hello, Tavion Thomas. Why don't you break my single-season touchdown record?
Joe Williams quit the team. What are we going to do? Oh, Joe Williams is back. Like every time,
still running in the Rose Bowl.
Every time we've had a personnel concern, something. Maybe there's a gap year, but every time there's something that jumps up. I
harped on this the other day. Cole Bishop, Sione Vaki. Oh no, the safety room's going to be awful. Teo Johnson's awesome. Like a year later, like there's certain positions that you just really shouldn't worry about if you're a Utah fan. If you do, I guess you just like being anxious.
Guess what?
I don't know.
There's actually only one position that you should worry about at Utah. When you say there's certain positions that you shouldn't worry about,
there's some that
It's actually there's only one position that you should worry about. It's wide receiver.
Yeah.
Every other position, Utah has been fine. As long as they're healthy, they have been fine.
Yeah, it's worked out, especially from Tyler Huntley on at quarterback. It's worked out fine if they were healthy. By the way, speaking of Urban Meyer, I was right. Only 3 undefeated teams at the end of after the national championship game, after the bowl season in that 2004 season. Utah, one of them. Finished 4th in the AP poll instead of top 3, even though they were one of 3 undefeated teams, because Oklahoma, who lost the national championship game, got the benefit of the doubt, finished 3rd. So, yeah, I mean, that's crazy that University of Utah football in a given year was one of 3 teams undefeated, and they might have been the same thing after the Sugar Bowl year too. Like 2 different years that's been the case.
By the way, the Sugar Bowl year they finished 2nd in the rankings.
Yeah. So it might have only been one other undefeated team.
And the Fiesta Bowl season, you finished 4th in the rankings with, I bet the highest recruiting ranking for anyone on that team was probably like a mid 3-star.
Yeah. Maybe lower. Who knows?
Anyway, all right. Totally switching gears next. There's a really, really interesting read in The Athletic right now about Aaron Donald. Yes, that Aaron Donald. Big, scary, strong. Everyone, even in the NFL, is intimidated by him, Aaron Donald. Living in fear. I'll tell you what scared him next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right. I got to finish the show with this just because, it's too often we finish on a positive note. Let's get really weird for the end here. I feel like we've talked about Aaron Donald plenty on this show. JB Long comes on, and he's part of our Rams relationship now as the Rams games are going to be played over on our sibling station. Aaron Donald is a legend in the NFL. He could still be playing if he wants. Jared Verse was complaining about how hard he made him work out, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if anyone is super familiar with this story. Aaron Donald has a stalker. Did you know this, James Peterson?
You mean besides the however many thousands of tens of thousands of Rams fans in SoFi Stadium, this is an actual real stalker?
Like a scary one.
I had no idea.
And the scariest thing about it is this woman's name is Janelle Anwar, okay? She is an otherwise seemingly normal individual who works as an administrator in healthcare. And this investigation done, and the Athletic has reported on this. This is where I'm reading a lot of the details here. Aaron Donald filed a restraining order against this woman. Again, this is a guy who offensive linemen in the NFL are terrified of. Like 6'7", 330-pound dudes don't want to see Aaron Donald coming. And he is terrified of this woman for good reason, because she's an insane person who is such an insane person that she's able to hide her insanity and just work and have a normal functioning life.
So she's a functioning sociopath. Gotcha.
While scaring the crap out of Aaron Donald. And as a father, as someone who has a family, I totally understand his recourse of making sure that like legal authorities and things got involved, because
listen, like if it was just him, he may not have been quite as scared of it, but if you got kids, you got a family, you're like, I got to have legal recourse here to protect them.
And this woman somehow kept tracking down phone numbers, tracking down emails after being blocked, created at least nine different email accounts to send Aaron Donald messages, sent gifts to his children, packages that would showed up in person at football camps that he did, made sure that she made contact with Aaron Donald and with his children as a stalker. Talked about how she was actually legally married to Aaron Donald in secret, and that his wife was like an imposter and was sent threatening stuff to Aaron and to his wife about the fact like, hey, we're married.
Do you believe that Aaron Donald is in the room with you right now? Married in secret to you? That's bananas.
In 2021, she was 48 years old and worked as a vice president of people operations, so HR effectively, in a digital health company. All the while creating like multiple accounts and sending packages and stalking Aaron Donald and believing in her own head that they were a married couple.
This is not too unlike the Coldplay concert incident, not with the stalker angle of it. Hold on with me here as I explain, where it's like that you hear that someone's doing something that unethical, in this case illegal, and you're like, they're in HR? They work in HR? They head human resources at a giant company? Seriously? That does not add up.
She believes so intensely that she was married to Aaron Donald that she actually went to the LA County Superior Court and filed for divorce from Aaron Donald.
Oh my gosh.
Because now, in their completely manufactured and made up in her own head marriage, they had come to a point of irreconcilable differences, and she wanted him to pay $3.8 million in a divorce settlement.
Hold on. Is this Aaron Donald that was created by ChatGPT for her? Is that what the end of this story is?
It really is absolutely nuts. She sent him messages about his 3-year-old son and how he needed to pay in order to keep his son safe and all this crazy stuff. I mean, and look, a lot of times, 90% of times when you hear about scary stalking cases, there is the obvious power difference in dynamic of it is a man stalking a woman oftentimes a woman who lives alone. The celebrity cases, the Caitlin Clark dealt with stalkers. Who is the tennis player, Monica Seles? Was she the one that got attacked? Like, it's not like athletes have not dealt with this before, but it's just such a strange, novel concept that this is a middle-aged woman who is stalking one of the most physically powerful and incredible athletes of our time, quite honestly, in Aaron Donald. And the recourse for him is so limited that he just has to hope nothing bad happens to himself, to his wife, to his kids.
It's terrible.
Like, I'm sure Aaron Donald is fine.
Yeah.
But this is significant enough in his life that he filed restraining orders, and now he was willing to speak with The Athletic about how intense it was. And when I say was, I mean her assertions in her stalking have continued. It just is. She sent him an email about her annual performance review at work. Like, hey, just so you know how things are going.
What do you think of your fake wife being awesome? Yeah, like how is someone who's supposed to be in charge of people's well-being, and that's what human resources is? I mean, there's other things, that financial aspects of it and stuff, but a lot of it is you're supposed to be someone who people can go to when things aren't great at work, and when you feel like the company needs to, there's some things that you're concerned about with the company that makes it hard for you to work, right? And yet you're behaving like that outside of work. It's just, that's wild, does not add up. I hope that this healthcare company has found out about this and that they've rightfully decided, I don't know if that person should be in charge of our employees' well-being in a way that HR heads are.
So the restraining order, a 5-year restraining order, has been granted to protect Aaron Donald and his family. Having known people who've dealt with this stuff in the past, a restraining order is a piece of paper.
Yeah.
That says if you violate this, you'll get in more trouble. But with someone who
entitles the person who's asked for it, it authorizes them to call the cops whenever that's violated, right, to help enforce it. That's really it, right?
It doesn't actually keep you safe.
Yeah.
Right? And this person is clearly so mentally ill. Like, go read the article, and I have a certain amount of sympathy for people who are mentally ill.
Yeah.
That evaporates when we're talking about children being in danger. And, like, I know there's not a legal way to make someone, to force somebody to take medications that would, bring them back from their psychosis or whatever. But just the dots that clearly do not connect in this story in anyone else's mind except for this stalker's. It really is a sobering and kind of scary thing to read. And you can approach it and you can read it from a different perspective, from an okay perspective, because so far there hasn't been a supremely negative outcome, and this is not a situation like the tennis stalker who at a game, right, at a match, jumped out of the stands and stabbed her. You know what I mean? This is Aaron Donald so far has been fine, but it's a look into she sent an email to a DJ who doesn't know who she is and is not connected with Aaron Donald, and Aaron Donald's home address was the subject line of the email. And the DJ got this. It was just I don't know what this is, except it's been part of this case, so now those dots have been connected. Clearly that made sense in this individual's mind, this crazy stalker lady's mind, and no one else knows what the heck is going on.
Yeah, going back to what you said about you have a certain level of sympathy unless it's endangering these kind of people. For me, when women are being endangered in this sort of situation, for example, the Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, when he was acting a fool, and he might still be, just not in the public eye anymore, at the end of his NFL career. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, it's just so sad. Like, he clearly has CTE or something. I just feel bad for him. Like, we can't hold him accountable. He's not himself. It's like when it came out, the allegations of sexual assault came out, at that point I'm like, no, like, screw you can't hold that kind of person accountable because they're not themselves. They still should not hurt people like that. And I'm totally with you with when children are in danger too. There's certain lines where it's like, yes, I know that that person is not themselves anymore, but they still should be held accountable with legally, otherwise, if they're hurting people.
Yeah, I mean,
that's I mean, this person,
that's the way our legal system should operate. So
yeah, thankfully, this person has not hurt anyone that Aaron Donald or anyone in his family or among his loved ones, but
there's a very real amount of emotional distress. I'll tell you that.
I'm glad. Like, thankfully, no physical harm has come, but the sympathy because of the emotional distress and the just still she has persisted on, emotionally at least putting Aaron Donald and his family in danger. Like, I don't have much sympathy for that person. Sorry.
Okay. This is a little bit of pseudo breaking news here on the show before I wrap things up and send it to Spence Checketts, who's on location at the Utah Red Zone store on campus, right?
Big pre-fall season, pre-football season sale going on at the Red Zone at the campus store there. So check that. So go say hi to Spence. Check out the deals there.
I was there yesterday. There's a lot of great stuff on sale right now. There's a lot of great stuff, new stuff that's been released. They finished the remodel on the store I don't know how long ago. It looks great up there. So go say hi to Spence Checketts. But this from the Big 12. Player availability reporting for football and women's and men's basketball being implemented immediately. Big 12 football programs will be required to submit daily reports beginning 3 days before each game. Available, probable, questionable, doubtful, or out. Injury reports.
Let's go. Finally. I put this in the notes a couple weeks ago. The ACC was the first power conference that I'm aware of. Maybe I've missed SEC or Big Ten doing this too. But the first power conference to say we're going to do this just a few weeks ago. Theirs, I think, is 48 hours before each football game, and at least the day and 24 hours before
these are daily
basketball
reports.
Games.
So daily reports. So beginning 3 days before each game, you get Cam Rising questionable, Cam Rising questionable, Cam Rising out. Assuming that the coaches want to actually do the reporting, but wild. I'm sure Spence Checketts will have some comments on that. We are out of time. Tune in on Friday for the PFL in Charlotte, one of our last tournament events of the year. It's this week and next week, and then we're done until
Scott Mitchell in the air chair the next 2 days.
Okay.
Great show lined up.
So the chair will be down here.
Including Maurice Jones-Drew tomorrow. He's a Rams color analyst and former UCLA Bruin. I'm sure you'll talk plenty about the Utah season opener. And I believe you're airing of grievances on Friday, OC?
I'll be here for the airing of grievances. Yeah. Can't miss that. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 792.1 FM. Spence Checketts in the Drive at the Utah Red Zone store on campus is next on Utah's #1 sports talk.